Chapter 507. No one had Gu Fei's reflexes and skills. All the players who were targeted by the projectiles were hit. Except for one person, Broken Arrow. Sure enough, he had some skill. The moment Gu Fei pounced, he didn't let go of this opportunity to observe Broken Arrow. He saw Broken Arrow dodge the projectile with a sidestep. If it wasn't to save Sword Demon, Gu Fei's dodging method would probably be the same as his. At the same time, Broken Arrow's gaze fell on the two of them. Although they fell to the ground awkwardly, they were the only two players in the field who weren't hit by the attack. Don't panic, this attack doesn't do any damage. At this time, a person in the bushes slowly stood up and looked at Gu Fei and Sword Demon. Although the messy face made it impossible to read his expression, just from his tone, everyone could hear that he was relaxed. One could imagine the kind and warm smile on his face, or rather, a pretentious smile, Ginkgo T. There was a clear difference between his voice and Ai's. It was obvious it was him. Just as he had said, the damage dealt by this attack was so light that it only tickled the nerves of the players who had been hit. Meanwhile, Gu Fei and the Sword Ghost, who had collapsed to the ground, were seen as symbols of excessive panic. Many players looked at them with disdain. Only the water-breaking arrow looked at the two with a different gaze than before. Ai, are you still not coming out? Ginkgo T continued to shout in a relaxed tone. The countdown stopped because of this attack, but 3 seconds had already passed and the duel was over. If no one was hit by the trap, it was time to count who had been hit by the most arrows. And there didn't seem to be much suspense. In the whole duel, there were only 3 arrows, and everyone saw that the arrows missed. Ginkgo T definitely wasn't hit by the arrows, and the last wave of strange attacks was clearly released by Ginkgo T. The audience watching from the outside circle couldn't dodge it, let alone Ai, who was closer to the circle. As expected, Ai stood up silently in the midst of the shouts, not saying a word. At this time, if he could admire his opponent's expression, it would undoubtedly be a very enjoyable moment. Unfortunately, the makeup was a very good camouflage, and Ginkgo T couldn't enjoy this pleasure. He probably felt that it wasn't an orgasm enough. In the end, he didn't say much and simply said, "There's always a higher mountain. Take care." Ai continued to remain silent. It was clear that this loss had made him quite disheartened. His little brothers, at this moment, also looked as if they had been struck by frost. All of them lowered their heads in silence. To everyone's surprise, including Gu Fei, the Sword Demon suddenly spoke, "Wait." Ginkgo T turned around and saw that it was Sword Demon. His face twitched. He was probably smiling, but at this moment, it looked like he was having a cramp. After twitching, he said politely, "Brother, you weren't hurt just now, right? Sorry about that." "What skill was that?" Sword Demon asked. "I don't think I need to tell you about this, do I?" Ginkgo T said disapprovingly. When it came to this kind of unfamiliar skill, players usually had 2 attitudes. One was to show off, to announce the powerful effects, data, and uses of the skill to the world, arousing the envy and worship of others. The other was to hide it. Although they knew how to use it, they didn't want others to know too much about their skill, so they wouldn't reveal the data and effects of the skill. Ginkgo T's attitude right now was clearly the latter. And Sword Demon was an old player, so he should understand this very well. When it came to the first type of person, even if you didn't ask, they would still brag. When it came to the second type, even if you asked, they wouldn't say. So, Sword Demon asked a question that shouldn't have been asked by an old player like him. The way he looked at Ginkgo T was like looking at an ignorant newbie. "I don't want to ask too much, but at the very least, your skill should be a trap, right?" Sword Demon said. "I don't need to tell you about this, right?" Ginkgo T said. "Not to me, but to this duel. If it's a trap skill, then may I ask how you activated it? Can you demonstrate it in front of everyone?" Sword Demon said. Ginkgo T fell silent. "Did you step into the trap yourself and activate its mechanism?" Sword Demon asked aggressively. There was an uproar. Even Ai suddenly came to his senses. He looked at Ginkgo T and said, "You cheated." "Cheated? What cheated? Who said I couldn't step into my own trap?" Ginkgo T retorted. "You admit it? That means you fell into the trap first, so you lost." Ai suddenly became spirited. Tiske, I stepped into my own trap, not yours. What are you so proud of? Ginkgo T said. The rules only said the first to step into the trap loses. It didn't say who did it. Ai said. Nonsense, that's because there's no need to say it. Who would step into their own trap? Do they have a bruise on their head? Ginkgo T said loudly. The forest suddenly fell silent. After a while, there was a burst of laughter. Especially Ai's group, their laughter was especially loud. And Ginkgo T's group was very embarrassed. Ginkgo T just wanted to say, stepping into your own trap doesn't count. This was an axiom that everyone understood. In the end, he was too anxious and made a mistake. Sword Demon didn't laugh. He looked at Ginkgo T and continued, according to what you're saying, stepping into your own trap doesn't count. That's based on the premise that no one would step into their own trap. Then you stepped into your own trap, so it's also against the rules. The loser always has a lot of excuses. Ginkgo T said disdainfully. The loser is you. Ai shouted. You look very unconvinced. If you're not convinced, then let's fight again. What's with all this nonsense? Ginkgo T said with disdain. Come on, I'm not afraid of you. Ai's voice was very loud. Gu Fei could only facepalm on the side. Young people, they really didn't know much about the world. They even fell for such a simple provocation. Although Ginkgo T didn't admit it verbally, everyone knew who won and lost. For someone like Ginkgo T who could still shamelessly argue after being exposed, it was obvious that he was a dead pig. He wasn't afraid of boiling water. Even if Gong Zheng won against him, he would have 10 million reasons to deal with him. It was extremely difficult to convince this kind of person. Moreover, in those duels just now, although Ginkgo T cheated, Ai didn't seem to have any powerful means of winning. If he rashly agreed to fight Ginkgo T again, he was a classic example of someone who didn't use his brain. Forget it. Gu Fei stepped forward and stopped Ai, who was about to enter the ring again. Are you afraid? Ginkgo T chuckled. Don't stop me. This kind of guy, I have to make him lose wholeheartedly. Ai was angry. Such words should be said by someone with strength. Be honest. Are you 100% confident in beating him? Gu Fei said. Ai fell silent. If he was confident, he would have won just now. He wouldn't have given Ginkgo T the chance to cheat in the last 3 seconds. If you don't even have this kind of confidence, how can you make him lose wholeheartedly? Gu Fei asked. Ai fell silent. Alright, let's go. Gu Fei gestured for Ai to return to his companions. Ai walked in a daze, as if he was still thinking about Gu Fei's words. However, behind him, Gu Fei had already rolled up his sleeves and said to Ginkgo T, Come, let me make you lose wholeheartedly. Everyone booed and jeered. Even Sword Demon felt that Gu Fei was too shameless. Ginkgo T laughed wildly. Kid, you're very arrogant. Gu Fei smiled. You'll know after the fight that I'm not arrogant. It's just the truth. After saying that, he untied his camouflage uniform and reached into his inner pocket to take out his sword. In the end, he heard a deep voice behind him. Enough. Everyone looked in the direction of the voice. There was only one person in that direction. Water-breaking arrow. This kind of duel is meaningless. Water-breaking arrow said. How is it meaningless? It's to improve one's PK level. Ginkgo T said. What's the use of this level? On the battlefield, no one will give you such a large space for you to fight. On the battlefield, you won't only have one enemy. On the battlefield, every inch of land can be hidden with danger. Your so-called duel is just a boring game. If you want to win in the future city battles, you'd better think about how to use your individual abilities in a chaotic situation to win the overall victory. How can something like an individual ranking help in city battles? Water-breaking arrow said. Let's go. Ginkgo T didn't comment on water-breaking arrow's words. He led his team away. As for Ai's group, they were more respectful towards water-breaking arrow. Gu Fei unexpectedly didn't feel any regret towards the fight being ruined. From the two groups' attitudes towards water-breaking arrow, he felt that there was something interesting. Did you see that? Looking at water-breaking arrow's departing figure, Gu Fei said to Sword Demon. What do you mean? Sword Demon asked. Ginkgo T and those guys don't seem to think much of water-breaking arrow. Gu Fei said. Sword Demon obviously saw this. Although water-breaking arrow's words are reasonable, I don't agree with his methods. This is just a game. Even if it's a guild leader, he wouldn't speak so forcefully. We should all be friends, brothers, and be on equal footing. His attitude is really like a boss lecturing his employees. But there are quite a few guild leaders who are this forceful. Gu Fei said, win people by virtue, win people by reason. As long as your words are right and your actions are righteous, even if your tone is harsh, there will still be many people who will agree. I'm just saying that I don't really like this kind of method. Sword Demon said, of course, you're not the only one who doesn't like it. Look at Ginkgo T, they really don't like it. Gu Fei said, it seems so. Sword Demon said, then look at Waterdep's personality, what kind of guild leader would he be? Gu Fei asked. Of course it's the kind I'm talking about. Sword Demon said. Birds of a feather flock together. If Waterdep is this kind of leader, then the guild members he gathered, of course most of them agree with his leadership style. But suddenly, there's a leader with a completely different style intervening and giving strong commands. Don't you think everyone will feel very unhappy? Gu Fei said. What are you trying to say? Sword Demon suddenly felt a little frightened. Butterfly Knot. What we're going to discuss next is about the leader, Kuff. Chapter 508. How could you not know what I'm talking about? Gu Fei asked. I understand what you mean. Breaking Water Arrow entering the guild with this kind of attitude is to deliberately destroy the harmonious atmosphere in water depth, right? Sword Demon said. Yeah, what do you think? Gu Fei said. My opinion. Sword Demon hesitated for a moment before saying, isn't your mentality too dark? It's just a game, there's no need to do so much, right? No. Gu Fei shook his head and insisted on his opinion. Your thinking is too old-fashioned. This game is no longer the ordinary game you guys used to play. When I chatted with Lu Ku before, she already mentioned that there are many specialized businesses, studios and the like that even looking for specialized talents to do it. This kind of thing, you've never played in the games you've played before, right? This is true. Sword Demon nodded. The activity of the studio shows the benefits that exist in the game. You still have the mentality of a normal player who only wants to have fun in the game, but if someone comes in to seek benefits, then there's nothing they can't do. Don't forget in this world, there are no laws. Gu Fei said. The more you say, the more mysterious it is. Sword Demon said. Let's wait and see. There are already signs of it. I feel that in this game, the strongest guild won't be an organization like before, but definitely supported by a studio and other interest groups, relying on benefits to win over people's hearts. Gu Fei said. What benefits to win over people's hearts? Sword Demon was a bit confused. Wages, big bro. Gu Fei said. Wages? You mean in the future, the guild will be like a real company? Sword Demon said. Not everyone is like this, but the strongest, I think it will be like this. Gu Fei said. Sword Demon thought. He couldn't figure out if Gu Fei's thinking was too naive or too trendy. Fan Tang Bai Sha. Ai and the others came over to greet them. Thank you for just now, Ai said. Sword Demon and Gu Fei had come out one after another just now. Speaking of which, they were on Ai's side. Everyone could see this. Ai came over to express his gratitude. Ha, it's nothing, the two of them said. You two aren't spies? I asked. He had probably already secretly appraised them, so he asked out of politeness. Assassin. Lightning Mage. The two of them introduced themselves. That Ginkgo T guy, I'll teach him a lesson next time, Ai said. He had to give an explanation for the previous battle. We're all brothers. What's the point? Let's just play around. Sword Demon was really a good brother. Not only did he act as a spy, but he also helped Waterdep's maintain the harmony of the guild. Ai and the others didn't comment. After a moment of silence, they changed the topic and introduced everyone in their group to Gu Fei and Sword Demon. Apart from Gu Fei and Sword Demon, the 6 of them were all spies. As expected, they were good friends who fought together, picked up girls, and farmed monsters. Because Gu Fei and Sword Demon had spoken up for justice in the previous duel, they clearly expressed that they didn't mind the 2 of them joining their group. You guys get to know each other better. I'll be leaving first, Gu Fei said to the others. Where are you going? Ai and the others were surprised. Now that there was nothing else to do, they were preparing to train the 2 new members in jungle combat skills and teamwork. I'm going offline to sleep. I still have work tomorrow. Gu Fei waved at everyone and left. Ai and the others watched him leave as if they were looking at a monster. It wasn't uncommon for office workers to play games, but because office workers didn't have much free time to play games, they would try to play as much as possible at night. It was extremely rare for office workers to go offline so early. Are you 2 friends? Ai and the others asked Sword Demon. Yes. Sword Demon replied. When does he come every day? Everyone asked. Sword Demon was too embarrassed to answer. The amount of time Gu Fei spent online every day was a disgrace to their group. I'm going offline first. You stay and build a relationship with them. If there's a chance, find out about the water-breaking arrow. Gu Fei messaged Sword Demon. Okay. Sword Demon was a man of few words. After Gu Fei left, no one paid attention to him anymore. Ai quickly began to teach Sword Demon how to cooperate with their group. Speaking of which, in the duel just now, Sword Demon had seen through Ginkgo T's trick, so he had a better impression of Ai. Let me tell you about our skills first. Ai said to Sword Demon. The 6 of us are equipped with special equipment to extend the effect of the traps, increase the power, and increase the number of traps. The 6 of us have a total of 22 traps. The 5 of them have level 40 hunting traps. I can put 2 foot traps with damage. What trap? Sword Demon had never heard of it. Foot trap, Ai said as he wrote 2 words on the ground. Besides damage, are there any special effects? Sword Demon asked. It can reduce the opponent's movement speed by 100% for 5 seconds, Ai explained. Very strong. It's much stronger than the freezing effect of water spells, Sword Demon said. But it only reduces the movement speed. It doesn't affect the attack, Ai said. Well, I understand. Sword Demon nodded. Come on, everyone get up. Let's set up our most common trap array and show it to Shasha. Ai directed the other 5 to move. Shasha. The sword ghost almost threw up while hugging the tree. This bunch of brats, don't randomly give people nicknames. The 6 of them immediately got to work, setting up traps everywhere. After Ai was the first to finish setting up the traps, he returned to Sword Ghost's side and began to explain to him how large the range of the trap formation was, which areas were controlled, which areas were empty, which areas were filled with traps, where they would hide, where they would launch their attacks, how to make the next step, and so on. Sword Demon listened and nodded. This was a level of skill that he had never touched on before. Then what should I do? Sword Demon couldn't help but feel a little immersed. Of course you already know where it's safe to stand in this trap array, but safety doesn't mean you can stand anywhere you want, you know? Ai said, I know, my position also has to match your position outside the circle, so that it doesn't affect your line of sight and attack angle. Sword Demon's perception was, of course, excellent, causing Ai to praise Sword Demon's awareness. Although there are many changes in the arrangement of the trap array, just like the one we're setting up now, we have some established plans and numbered them. This set, we call it version C. When you hear version C, you should know the position of each trap. But we, who are lying in ambush on the periphery, will choose different positions depending on the terrain or the situation. This kind of position selection, not only do we have to learn, you also need to master it. Because every time, you can only receive the coordinates provided by your teammates. You need to use your eyes to determine which tree your teammates will be hiding under, or in which bushes. This requires a certain understanding of your teammates' habits, and only then can you quickly make accurate judgments. This way, we can become the most tacit team. Ai said, that makes sense. Sword Demon was a little surprised, because this kind of speech really didn't sound like something a kid who could be easily provoked would say. Ha, It's all taught by Old Broken. IE said. Speaking of which, it's a bit of a waste for Old Broken to become a marksman. I think his trap awareness and skills are probably better than even guild leader Deepwater. One of the 6 said. Yeah. We played with these trap arrays for a long time before we came up with them, but Old Broken just made some random adjustments to make them more powerful. Especially the big, medium, small, and 3 sets of A, B, C. They're really, I don't have words to describe them. Another said. Amazing, absolutely amazing. Old Broken, it's water-breaking arrow, right? I heard that he hasn't been in the guild for long, right? The topic shifted to water-breaking arrow on its own. Sword Demon really didn't want to refuse. If he didn't ask about it, he would be letting down his painstaking makeup. Yeah, it hasn't been that long. We don't know the specifics, but it's definitely a bit earlier than you and Soup. IE said. Oh, after joining the guild these past few days, he's been the most talked about. Sword Demon said. Yeah, just from the few sets of trap arrays he designed, we know he's not an ordinary person. IE said. Such a powerful person, was he someone from Forest Shade City? Why haven't I heard of him? Sword Demon expressed his doubts. I haven't heard of him either. Everyone was confused. What's so strange about it? Everyone has interacted with Old Broken. He's obviously not the type of person who likes to show off. Do you think he's that idiot Ginkgo tea? Our guild is really lucky to be able to meet this kind of person and pull him into the guild. IE said. In this whatever city battle, no one will be our opponent. I just don't know when it will start. I can't wait. It's good to open it later. Let's practice more and have a greater chance. Yes. By the way, Shasha, let's add each other as friends. In this jungle battle, sometimes we need some private chat. IE suddenly said. This was naturally something Sword Demon wouldn't agree to even if he was beaten to death. He quickly said, I'm really sorry, my friends list is full. Many of them were added after joining the guild in the past few days. They're all brothers in the guild. I'm really sorry to delete them right after adding them. Let's wait a few more days. When I see that there's no contact, I'll delete them and add all of us. Oh, they all expressed their understanding. Then you should quickly familiarize yourself with these sets of trap arrays that we often use. Of course. Sword Demon wiped his sweat. He suddenly realized that when needed, everyone could become very treacherous. Lying was really a human instinct. He just opened his mouth and after he finished speaking, he found that, TSK, it was perfect and flawless. Damn, why am I being narcissistic? Am I infected? Chapter 509. For the entire night, Sword Demon followed IE and the others through the forest, familiarizing himself with the traps, paying attention to his own movements, and paying attention to the habits of IE and the others. Even though IE's words were clear and logical, after a night of understanding, Sword Demon realized that they were just talking. Flawless teamwork was not something that could be practiced overnight. However, the traps on the ground weren't undeserved. Because Sword Demon had to be in the middle of them to move, he had a deep understanding of them. It seems like it's morning already. After a night, IE walked out from behind a tree while stretching. The morning he was talking about was the morning in real life. For all-nighters like them, the time others woke up was usually the time they got off work. Sword Demon was also a member of this clan. He looked at the time and felt that it was about time to go offline. Everyone came out of hiding and started to organize their night's harvest. Although it was called training, it wasn't as simple as setting up traps in the forest. In fact, everyone just added some complicated tricks to the process of killing monsters and leveling up. After a night, there were still quite a few scattered harvests. However, for a top-tier expert like Sword Demon, the efficiency of this night's leveling was quite average. Moreover, Sword Demon didn't come here to level. It was a pity that Broken Arrow didn't show up again that night. From the mouths of IE and the others, he could only see their admiration for Broken Arrow. As a result, it seemed that Gu Fei's deduction was more and more reliable. However, for Sword Demon, who had been immersed in the game for too long, he still felt that Gu Fei's avant-garde thinking was a bit inconceivable. Shasha, aren't you going to go offline? Ai and the others had finished packing up and came over to greet Sword Demon. Put away your clothes. Don't wipe your face. Just cover it up. It'll be maintained when you go offline, Ai told Sword Demon. I know. Sword Demon nodded. How could Sword Demon not understand these basic settings? The group left the forest together. After staying in the dark forest for nearly 10 hours, the Sword Demon felt that the sunlight was particularly dazzling. As for Ai and the others, they were clearly used to this kind of situation. They skillfully covered their eyes with their hands and continued chatting as if nothing had happened. The Sword Demon imitated them and looked around again. The edge of the forest was really lively at this time, and everyone looked the same. They put their hands on their eyes and hurried along like Goku. The forest shade players were already used to it, but Sword Demon, a foreigner, really found it funny. Together with Ai and the others, I headed to the resurrection point. After agreeing on a time to meet up, everyone logged off together. In the evening, Gu Fei always came online in the evening, and at this time, Sword Demon had already been in the forest with Ai's group for a few hours. Ordinary leveling efficiency was meaningless to Sword Demon. More importantly, he could no longer get any information about the water-breaking arrow. Of course, Sword Demon couldn't be comfortable. But the honest Sword Demon played his role as White Sand so faithfully. What made him depressed was Gu Fei, who played the role of Rice Soup. As an actor, this guy didn't think about how to play his role well. Instead, he directly replaced the role with his own style. This was a bit too free and easy. Since he went offline last night, he hadn't shown up since. Ai and the others weren't suspicious, but they already had a lot of opinions. In their opinion, since this comrade Rice Soup was an office worker, he shouldn't be assigned with them who could stay up all night. With so much time to get used to each other, wouldn't he be a burden to everyone when the time came? When will Rice Soup be served? Ai and the others had repeatedly asked this question countless times. It should be soon. It should be served then? Strange, why hasn't it been served yet? Sword Demon laughed and covered for Gu Fei. Finally, Gu Fei came online, but before he could send a message urging him to come over, he received a message from Gu Fei. How is it? Did you find out anything? After you went offline, I haven't seen the water-breaking arrow again. Sword Demon replied helplessly. Oh, then what about other people? For example, those kids. Gu Fei said. They have great respect for the water-breaking arrow. In addition, I've seen the traps designed by the water-breaking arrow. They really do have some skill. Sword Demon said. Then it seems that we still don't have an answer about whether or not we can cut the water-breaking arrow today. Gu Fei said. This is indeed a problem that requires further research, the Sword Demon replied. You're online for a long time every day, right? You haven't found anything after so long? What are you doing? Are you going to play with those kids? Gu Fei said. To be honest, what's worse is that I'm playing with them now. Sword Demon said in pain. Why don't you join a Waterdeep guild? Gu Fei said. Okay, I won't joke around anymore. Regarding the water-breaking arrow, I don't think I can get anything useful from these people. If I want to understand him, I can only approach him personally. Sword Demon said. Okay, find him, follow him, and see what he's busy with. Gu Fei said. Follow him? Sword Demon felt it was a bit wretched. What else can I do? Walk in front of him and ask, Hey, brother, are you a good person or a bad person? Is that so? Gu Fei said. Following this person should be difficult, right? Will he be like you and be able to feel murderous intent? Sword Demon said. It won't be a problem if the distance is a bit further. Gu Fei said. How far? Sword Demon asked. 10 meters should be fine. Gu Fei said. Okay, then there's another problem. Where are we going to find the water-breaking arrow? Sword Demon said. Find your old friend. Let her find an excuse to ask around. She can shout in the guild channel and won't be able to find out where the water-breaking arrow is? As long as he's with a Waterdeep guild member. Gu Fei said. Sword Demon immediately sent a message to Lu Ku and asked her to find out where the water-breaking arrow was. That's easy. Lu Ku replied. Speaking of which, You guys have been busy all day, right? Did you notice anything? Sword Demon felt that the word, you guys, was extremely harsh. He was the only one who had been busy all day. Gu Fei went to the group and watched a duel that lasted for 5 minutes without seeing anything. Then after showing off a bit, he floated away, leaving him alone with a group of little brats until now. What was even worse was that after answering Lu Ku's question, Sword Demon discovered that his messing around really didn't have any results. His answer to Lu Ku was actually all the deductions that Gu Fei had made yesterday. This guy's idea is quite bold. Sword Demon was an honest person. When he told Lu Ku these things, he didn't forget to tell her that this was the deduction that Gu Fei made after witnessing the water-breaking arrow's behavior. Then I interacted with that group of little brats called IE for a night and found out that they really admired the water-breaking arrow. Sword Demon didn't want to admit that he had been busy all night, so he concluded something that he felt was meaningful. But it was obvious that his night was destined to be a tragedy. After receiving this message, Lu Ku replied, "You discovered this after one night?" Sword Demon, "To be honest, I didn't think this was suitable for you from the beginning." Lu Ku said, "Sword Demon, but that guy's deduction was reasonable." Lu Ku said, "You don't form a guild now, so you may not be aware of some guild matters." Lu Ku said, "Let's take the upcoming city war as an example. What kind of position will the final victor have in the main city? What practical benefits will there be? These haven't been officially announced yet, but some studios have already begun to move. Don't you understand the situation of studios? Of the larger companies, which one of them didn't have some connections to the game company? When we played Eternal Legend, didn't you find out that Tengfei Studio was sweeping up a lot of Gulen Spring in the market, and then told us that this thing would definitely rise in price and suggested that we buy it if we could? Later, after the expansion pack was updated, Gulen Spring was one of the main raw materials in the production of equipment, food, and medicine. The price skyrocketed, and everyone took the opportunity to make a fortune. Now the guilds are the same. In the past, the studio operated a guild, but it was a commodity that was sold to others whenever there was a chance. Now they seem to have the idea of forming their own guilds. I think it's because of this city war. The winner of this city war, even if there aren't many vested interests, will definitely have the follow-up benefits of sustainable development. We have learned a lot. Sword Demon listened and was a little speechless. Our guild is now the most powerful in Shady Forest City. It can be said that we are the biggest obstacle for them to win the city war. If the studio is meddling, I won't be surprised by any means, Lu Ku said. Your current thoughts are quite intense. I need to digest them. I think we should meet up. You and Qianli talk together. Your views are more similar, Sword Demon said. Hey, don't tell me you've really become so slow? This game really isn't the same as before, Lu Ku said. I know, I've gradually felt the same recently. I won't send it for now. Tell us a place to meet and talk. Sword Demon replied and told Ai and the others that he had something to do and had to leave. Then he informed Gu Fei to prepare to meet up with Lu Ku. What, Boss Lu has new instructions? Gu Fei smiled. He originally came for the Sword Demon's mission, but now he had the intention of helping Lu Ku remove the hidden danger of the guild. She agrees with your deduction, Sword Demon said. Really? What does she think? Gu Fei asked. You'll know in a moment. In a thatched hut in the city, a woman and 2 men sneaked in one after another. It was Lu Ku, Gu Fei, and Sword Demon. This thatched hut was also Lu Ku's private property. Talking in such a place was undoubtedly as safe as sending messages. Chapter 5:10. Hi. The 3 of them greeted each other. There's no place to sit? Gu Fei looked around. The layout of the room was so simple that there was nothing. Sit? Can't we sit on the floor? Lu Ku tapped the floor with her foot. Gu Fei obviously didn't have to sit, but he felt that it was a bit funny and unnatural to specially come to this place with the 3 of them standing in a triangle to discuss things. But seeing that the 2 of them didn't care, he didn't say anything more. He casually took a pose against the wall and went straight to the point. Breaking water arrow is a bit interesting. Sword Demon has already told me what you mean. Lu Ku said. What do you think? Gu Fei asked. Breaking Water Arrow has skill and character. There are many people in the guild who admire him. This isn't a secret. But you have that kind of doubt. TSK, your mind is very dark. Lu Ku said. Heh. You two are worthy of being old friends. Gu Fei said. Of course. Lu Ku said. I have to make it clear that this person has become the assassination target of Sword Demon's daily mission. And I am speculating from the perspective of the game's operation. I don't think the system will give players a mission for no reason that they must PK to complete. In view of the fact that I was in a very similar mission before, PK was against a guy who had killed more than 1,600 players. So regarding the target of Sword Demon's mission, I am not stingy in guessing from the most malicious angle. Whether it is Breaking Water Arrow or not, this isn't the key. Gu Fei said. Then you guys have also met Breaking Water Arrow face to face. What impressions do you have? Lu Ku asked. Neck, waist, and thighs are thick. Typical strength-type player. In combat, he is probably good at nimble footwork. His punches have explosive power and his head is strong. Gu Fei said. What is he talking about? Lu Ku asked Sword Demon. Professional judgment. Sword Demon said. Too professional. But these don't seem to be the key. The key is his intentions. I wonder if he really has some ulterior motive for being so well-liked. Lu Ku said. It's not that easy to find out. We have to follow and observe. Gu Fei said. Follow? Wow, you're so wretched. Lu Ku exclaimed. This was Sword Demon's idea? Gu Fei said. You've learned bad things. Lu Ku looked at Sword Demon with a pained expression. I told you not to have too much contact with shady people. Don't joke around. Sword Demon said. Alright, then let's do this for now. I'll ask around for this guy's location, and you guys go observe him in secret. Take a look at this guy's behavior and actions. Once we understand more, we can make further deductions. Lu Ku said. Do you want to go together? Gu Fei asked. Me? I'll pass, I'm too conspicuous. Lu Ku said. You can put on makeup. Didn't I say that before? I'd rather die than paint my face like that. Lu Ku said. Women. Gu Fei sighed in his heart. When it was important, she was still obsessed with some things that didn't matter. Then hurry up and go. Find out where he is as soon as possible. Sword Demon said. Wait for my news. Lu Ku nodded at Sword Demon. The two were about to go out when Sword Demon suddenly turned his head. Oh yeah, who are these rice soup and white sand people? Won't they be exposed? Don't worry. Although these two guys joined our guild, they haven't arrived at Forest Shade City yet. I've already told them not to rush over. Lu Ku said. You've already sent people to other main cities? For what? To open a branch? Sword Demon asked. Why do you care so much? Gossip. Go to your thing. Daily quests, you want to do it for a week? Lu Ku said. And this. Take it, I almost forgot. Seeing that the two were about to go out, Lu Ku remembered something and handed something to each of them. The two took a look. Sure enough, it was the badge of the Deep Freeze Guild. The official badge issued by the system was made of unknown materials, but this pirated one was carved from wood and then colored. There were indeed crouching tigers and hidden dragons among the players. This was enough to pass off as the real thing. Take it. If anyone suspects it, take it out for them to see. Try not to wear it. If you encounter appraisal, you'll definitely be exposed. Lu Ku warned. Is that so? Upon hearing that, both of them performed appraisal on the item. As expected, the item identified by the appraisal skill was a piece of wood. Let's go. The two left the small hut after putting on the fake badge. They covered their faces and walked toward the forest. On the way, Gu Fei suddenly made a new suggestion. I think we should let Gongzi come over. That guy is good at figuring out other people's intentions. That's true, but do you think he'll be willing to do it like this? Sword Demon gestured at Gu Fei's face. No, I mean after the two of us finish investigating the situation, we can let him analyze it. Gu Fei said. Then let's finish first. Okay, let's go. The two entered the forest, changed into camouflage, and walked toward the training area of the Deep Freeze Guild. Unexpectedly, as they gradually approached, Gu Fei suddenly felt the surrounding aura move. Just like the first time the two came, a few people suddenly stood out from the bushes behind the trees and aimed their arrows at the two. "We're on the same side." Gu Fei waved in all directions. How could this be? Sword Demon sent a private message to Gu Fei. The so-called guilty conscience was the sword ghost's current state. At the slightest sign of trouble, he would immediately suspect that he had been exposed. He didn't have the talent to be a bad person. "Badge, quickly put on the badge." Gu Fei's heart moved. He felt that this should be the case. While sending a message to Sword Demon, he had already put on the badge. Rice soup, white sand, new member. Gu Fei introduced himself and Sword Demon to the surrounding players. He lifted his camouflage and showed everyone the badge he had just hung on the chest of his mage robe. Sword Demon imitated him and did the same. The two lifted their clothes and spun around like male models on the runway. As for whether this fake badge would work or not, the two of them weren't sure. But thinking about it, Lu Ku put in a lot of effort to get it. She should understand their guild's habits. If it didn't work, she wouldn't have put in so much effort. Just as Gu Fei was thinking about this, the people in the circle had already put away their bows and arrows. They hid again as if nothing had happened. Only one person waved at the two of them, indicating that it was fine. The two of them breathed a sigh of relief and continued to walk forward through the security area. "They're quite guarded," Gu Fei said. "Are they afraid that strangers will come in and steal military secrets? What secrets can there be? The main thing is that they don't want people to sneak into their practice area and get in the way." Sword Demon had played with Ai and the others for a long time. He knew that when they were practicing with traps and monsters, it was quite annoying if an unknown stranger stepped in. The coordinates of the water-breaking arrow that Lu Ku had asked for were quickly sent over. The two of them immediately headed in this direction. "If we keep 10 meters away, will we be unable to hear what he says?" Sword Demon still remembered Gu Fei saying to keep 10 meters away, enough to not be detected by the water-breaking arrow. That person's voice is quite strong. If it's quiet enough, 10 meters away, it's enough to hear very clearly, Gu Fei said. The two of them chatted as they walked. From time to time, they would see the figures of Extreme Freeze players dressed like them. But at this time, they were already in the inner area. No one jumped up and pointed their bows at the two of them. Even if they met face to face, everyone just smiled casually and passed by. "Look, it's over there." Sword Demon suddenly pointed with his hand. In the area in front of them, there were 10 or so players surrounding them. Water-breaking Arrow was among them, holding something in his hand and gesturing to the people around him. "Go this way." The two of them walked in a small circle. At the same time, they discovered that it was quite difficult to get within 10 meters of water-breaking Arrow without anyone noticing. This was because this guy wasn't alone. There was a circle of people around him, and a circle of eyes were looking in all directions. The two of them, who had only been with these players for a day, didn't have the ability to hide in the bushes and move quietly like Ginkgo Tea or Ai. In the end, Sword Demon entered stealth, and Gu Fei used teleportation to do a few space jumps. The two of them finally arrived behind a tree behind water-breaking Arrow. "What's he holding in his hand?" Gu Fei asked Sword Demon. He hid behind the tree, and Sword Demon relied on stealth to stand outside and look in that direction. "A piece of paper," Sword Demon replied. At the same time, water-breaking Arrow's voice also clearly floated into the two's ears. "You guys see this place? When you lure the enemy over, no matter which direction you come from, these 3 entrances are enough to take care of you. And after entering the 3 paths, the way you walk is completely the same. This way, you don't need to memorize too much, and the brothers who set the traps are easy to grasp. But when it comes to actual combat, we also need to fully deal with the enemy's numbers. If it's only 2 or 3 people, there's nothing to say. But we have 12 people. In fact, there's no need to lure the enemy into traps. We can just surround and suppress them. We really need to make full use of the traps when both sides have equal numbers, or even when the enemy is strong and we are weak. As long as we can lure the enemy into our traps, then we won't be fighting with 12 people. Every trap set on the ground is our partner. So, little star, your role is very crucial. You are the guide of this entire battle. Every step you take is related to your teammate's next move. Everyone is following your guidance. You must be familiar with the position of every trap, the position of every teammate. Every step you take will have an impact on the battle situation. You must know in your heart what kind of impact it will have. Because the turning point of victory and defeat is often at your step. Wow, this guy really knows how to talk. Gu Fei exclaimed. Yeah. Not only could the sword ghost talk, but he could also see. He clearly saw that the guide of the battle, that the water-breaking arrow focused on, was a rogue. Because of the painted face, Sword Demon couldn't see his current emotions, but he could imagine that this thief must be extremely proud. Chapter 511. From your dark psychological point of view, he seems to be showing off his knowledge, encouraging people, and inducing others to have a good impression of him. But normally, if I were to explain, it would probably be the same, Sword Demon said honestly. That's right, continue to observe, Gu Fei replied. The two quietly followed water-breaking arrow. This guy had been going in circles in the forest, but it was a circle with a fixed route. Every place he passed by was a team's practice ground. Water-breaking arrow would observe their situation from the side and give some targeted advice. And his words and actions were just like what Sword Demon said, they were all very normal actions. Of course, from the perspective of Gu Fei's dark psychological point of view, he had ulterior motives. However, to prove this point, more convincing evidence was needed. Gu Fei and Sword Demon followed him to discover something, but in the end, what they heard and saw was nothing more. Can you see anything? Gu Fei and Sword Demon were a little tired from following him. After eavesdropping on water-breaking arrow's conversation with the players, they didn't immediately chase after him. The two sat together under a tree and looked at the sky that couldn't be seen. Sword Demon's right hand was raised to his mouth again, his two fingers holding his dagger in a smoking posture. I can't see anything at all. Sword Demon sighed. We're not professionals in this kind of thing. Gu Fei had to admit that Sword Demon had online gaming talent, and he was a kung fu expert. Both of them were indeed outstanding in their own fields, but this kind of investigation and evidence collection was also a subject. The two of them didn't have much experience. Perhaps there was a professional who had already seen more suspicious points from water-breaking arrow's words and actions. He was not like Gu Fei, who had a preconceived notion of gauging the heart of a gentleman with his own mean measure. What should we do? Sword Demon asked Gu Fei. He was the one who came up with the idea of following him, and now it seemed to be a failure. If he continues to go back and forth in this forest to guide everyone, I don't think we'll find anything, Gu Fei said. But maybe he'll go somewhere else? Who are you going to meet? There's no need for that. It's fine as long as there's news of the incident, Sword Demon said. How troublesome. Gu Fei sighed ruefully. Sending messages was something that players had no way of knowing. If they had any secrets, they could just say them here. Outsiders wouldn't have the slightest chance of knowing. Hey, are we still following him or not? He's going far away. The two of them were only taking a short break behind the tree. The breaking water arrow was still within their sights. To be honest, Gu Fei wasn't in a hurry. This guy is just a simple quest for you. He is indeed very helpful to Deepwater's guild, but your quest doesn't conflict with this help. Even if you kill him, this kind of help will still be provided. With your face covered, he won't know who you are, and it won't affect his relationship with Deepwater and the others. You don't need to feel any guilt for killing him. You're just completing your quest. I know, but I'm not concerned about the mission right now. If this guy has any ulterior motives towards Deepwater and Luke's guild, I must stop him, Sword Demon said. Then I suggest we go find Gongzi. I think he can provide the greatest help in the current situation, Gu Fei said. But Sword Demon nodded. It's best if his lousy guild collapses. Why should I help him? The place to find Han family young master was, of course, a tavern in Shady Grove City. The entire Shady Grove City was like a village. The architectural style was very rural, and the tavern was no exception. The environment really felt many years behind the other main cities. Han family young master, who was drinking under such conditions, was obviously in a bad mood. After listening to Gu Fei and Sword Demon's words, he threw out such a sentence without thinking. Gu Fei still wanted to persuade him, but he heard Sword Demon on the side, as if he didn't hear Han family young master refusing to help, and continued to talk about the situation they observed. That water-breaking arrow, according to Qianli's judgment, has a trained combat physique. In addition, he seems to be really knowledgeable about jungle combat, and has a set of traps. There are a lot of people in extreme frost who admire him. What's so strange about that? It just so happens that his real strength is displayed in the game. Such a person is of course much stronger than ordinary players. Isn't there one next to you? Han family young master was, of course, talking about Gu Fei. With a body of kung fu, he was like a fish in water in the game's world of fighting and killing. That's true, but I understand your concern, said Han family young master. Using this kind of trick to defeat a guild, although it's disgusting, is indeed the most effective way. Sword Demon didn't speak. Gu Fei looked into his eyes and found that his gaze was very distant. It was obvious that he was thinking of something. And what Han family young master said just now seemed to be pointing at something. Did this include their past? What happened at that time? I know you still don't want to admit it. However, I still want to reiterate for the nth time that it was definitely a premeditated action, not what you call a quarrel between brothers, said Han family young master. What happened? What happened? Gu Fei quickly inquired. It was in the game before. Sword Demon only said this sentence and didn't continue. In fact, from the simple conversation between the two, Gu Fei had already guessed something. It was probably that Sword Demon's guild also had a very popular person like Broken Water Arrow, which caused the guild members to wholeheartedly support him. In the end, the guild must have disbanded or split up. Han family young master thought that it was premeditated to break up the guild, while Sword Demon thought that it was just an internal conflict between the two of them. There were naturally many details in this, but it was obvious that Sword Demon didn't want to mention it, so Gu Fei kept his mouth shut. Although he would occasionally say a few poisonous words, those were all harmless jokes. Gu Fei wouldn't intentionally do things that really hurt people's hearts. Do you think there's anything suspicious about this Broken Water Arrow? Gu Fei brought the topic back to the present. He doesn't need anything suspicious. In a guild, it's taboo to have a person who can steal the limelight from the guild leader and is more popular than the guild leader. As the saying goes, a mountain can't have two tigers. If Deepwater doesn't understand this, his guild will either split up or disband. But with that guy's personality, he'll probably stupidly give up the position of guild leader to someone else and still think that he's noble and unquestionable integrity, said Han family young master. That's also good, it's not a big deal, right? The position of guild leader wasn't a big deal, so Gu Fei didn't care at all. The guild leader is the soul of a guild. The cultivation of a successful guild's temperament is almost all under the influence of the guild leader. Casually changing the guild leader means changing the entire guild's style, principles, and aura. Only irresponsible people would casually hand over the position of guild leader to an inexplicable person. Although it's a game, this position isn't simple. Many brothers and friends are anxiously waiting for it. Just saying that so-and-so is more suitable to be the guild leader than me, and you throw the position away. You think that you're cool and noble, but do you know how many people's hearts have turned cold? Said Han family young master. Wah. Gu Fei didn't know whether to sit or not at the table. In any case, he felt uncomfortable. Are you the one talking? Are you the one talking? Why are these words coming from the mouth of the most despicable person? Is there still justice in this world? Go back and tell Deepwater that if he's still clear-headed, he should kick this kind of person out of the guild as soon as possible. Even if he doesn't have such thoughts, sometimes things don't go according to his wishes. Continued Han family young master. Not according to my wishes, but will it follow your wishes? Suddenly, a voice came from the other side. The three looked towards the direction of the voice and were immediately stunned. Gu Fei and Sword Demon looked at each other. They didn't think that there would be such a coincidence. Deepwater actually appeared here at this time and seemed to have listened to everything. Oh, it's you? You came at the right time. The two of us here have really worried their hearts out for you. Han family young master's face never showed embarrassment or embarrassment. At any time, he could look down on everything with disdain. Sometimes, it was really admirable. Deepwater didn't say a word. He silently walked to the table of the three and looked at Gu Fei and Sword Demon. Suddenly, his hand quickly stretched out. Even Gu Fei didn't have time to react. The mask on Sword Demon's face was already pulled off by Deepwater. Fuck! The one who shouted was Han family young master. Sword Demon's face, with such makeup, was really a bit surreal. What do you mean? Deepwater held the mask on Sword Demon's face in his hand. Breaking Water Arrow is my quest target. I want to see what kind of person he is, replied Sword Demon. Quest target? I think I heard that you guys are suspicious of something? Deepwater's tone was very calm, but Sword Demon knew that they would never talk so calmly. Everyone laughed and scolded each other. They would always be very excited. That's right. I suspect that he snuck into your guild with ulterior motives. Sword Demon dared to do things. He would never be afraid to admit it. Really? What intentions? Asked Deepwater. I don't have any evidence. It's just a suspicion, said Sword Demon. Really? That's why you made these things? Deepwater shook off Sword Demon's mask. Sword Demon was silent. We're old friends. Deepwater said, if you really have any suspicions, you can tell me directly. Just because it's just a suspicion, I don't want to affect your relationship. So, I want to see clearly in the dark. Sword Demon's words were very sincere. His expression was also very sincere. Unfortunately, it was covered by the makeup. So, I really should thank you, said Deepwater. Sword Demon continued to be silent. Old broken. Deepwater suddenly shouted. Gu Fei and Sword Ghost were both shocked. Then, they saw the door of the tavern being pushed open. Broken Arrow had already calmly walked to the table in a few steps, looking down from above. My friends have some misunderstanding towards you. Come and explain it to them, said Deepwater. There's nothing to explain. Time will prove everything. Breaking Water Arrow said indifferently. Well said. Deepwater heavily patted Breaking Water Arrow's shoulder. Time will reveal a person's heart. Time will indeed prove everything. Deepwater angrily threw Sword Demon's mask on the table and turned to leave. Chapter 5:12. Enjoy your meal. Water-Breaking Arrow raised his hand and made a please gesture before leaving the tavern along with Water Depth. Wow. Look at this guy, he's so cunning. Gu Fei felt that the atmosphere was heavy and awkward and needed some adjustment. Actually, Water-Breaking Arrow was the same as Gu Fei and Sword Demon, they both had their faces covered. Han family young master didn't say a word as he quietly looked at Sword Demon. Sword Demon slowly picked up the mask that Water Depth dropped on the table and carefully folded it neatly before putting it back into his pocket. He stood up and took a deep breath. I'm going to wash my face. After saying this to Gu Fei and Han family young master, Sword Demon left alone. Going for wool and coming home shorn. Han family young master returned to his normal self and said to Gu Fei in a mocking tone. Bastard, I underestimated him. Gu Fei nodded. If Water Depth's appearance here could be considered a coincidence, then Water-Breaking Arrow appearing at the same time was very abnormal. In the forest, it was originally the two of them following Water-Breaking Arrow, but then they gave up halfway and went to the tavern to find Han family young master. Just as they arrived, Water Depth and Water-Breaking Arrow arrived behind them and heard their conversation. No matter how you looked at it, this coincidence was man-made. This guy noticed that we were following him a long time ago, but he didn't do anything. He didn't do anything until he saw that we were doing something else. He immediately called Water Depth over and caught us. Gu Fei asserted. Obviously. Han family young master said, he didn't need to say anything. Water Depth listened and saw for himself. There's nothing more convincing than this. But Sword Demon was clearly doing this for his own good. How could he not understand this? Gu Fei said. Of course he understood, but he couldn't stand Sword Demon's suspicion towards Water-Breaking Arrow because he already saw Water-Breaking Arrow as his brother. Han family young master said, "Do you think it's that easy to recognize a brother?" Gu Fei expressed his disagreement. "That's right. This is the biggest shortcoming of this idiot. He always trusts others easily," Han family young master said. "Childish, very childish," Gu Fei commented with an air of seniority. After he finished, he stood up and said, "I'm going to look for the water-breaking arrow. I don't care about anything else, just kill it first." "It's useless." The Han family young master shook his head. "Violence won't solve this problem. Cutting off the water-breaking arrow will only worsen the relationship between Water Depth and Sword Demon." "I know, I'm just saying," Gu Fei said. "So what can we do?" "Actually, we don't have to do anything at all," Han family young master said. "Oh. Wait until Water-Breaking Arrow turns his guild upside down. That idiot will naturally know how stupid he is," Han family's young master said as he drank his wine. Gu Fei nodded. "That's rare. I actually agree with your plan this time. Unfortunately, there's someone who doesn't know how to do it," Han family young master said. "Sword Demon?" Gu Fei realized. Han family young master nodded. Gu Fei was silent. "Actually, both of them are idiots." Han family young master shook his head. "Then what do you think Sword Demon will do now?" Gu Fei asked. "He's probably going to find Ku first. Don't tell me that Ku didn't participate in this at all," Han family young master said. "Will it affect the relationship between Lu Ku and Water Depth?" Gu Fei said. "Now do you know how serious the problem is? Water Depth only trusts Water-Breaking Arrow and doesn't trust anyone else." Gu Fei was shocked. "Didn't I say it before? This isn't a problem of trust. It's just that he hates people who are suspicious of his friends. Everyone has something they can't tolerate. You've stepped on Water Depth's weakness," Han family young master said. "Now that you mention it, I feel that Water-Breaking Arrow has completely considered Water Depth's personality. If he's just a friend he's known for a few days, how could he have such a deep understanding of Water Depth? That guy came prepared. He had already investigated everything that Water Depth could do." Gu Fei said. "That's right. That's why with Water Depth's trusting personality, he's basically his nemesis. He'll be completely eaten by him. In the end, he'll obediently give up his position and think that it's a good thing," Han family young master said. "Yeah, then Water-Breaking Arrow will be in control. Whether it's disbanding the guild or kicking people out, he'll do whatever suits his interests. Considering that many people are used to pushing their responsibilities away, no matter how much they supported Water-Breaking Arrow before, they'll naturally blame Water Depth for giving the position to Water-Breaking Arrow. After all, he gave up his position and trusted him the most." Gu Fei continued to imagine. "Everyone is pointing their fingers at him," Han family young master summarized. "He can kill anyone," Gu Fei added. "Doesn't it feel good?" Han family young master asked. "Too good. But if it's Water-Breaking Arrow who ends up like this, then it'll be even better. Is there any way?" Gu Fei asked. Messing with people should be Han family young master's fort. "Not at the moment," Han family young master replied. Gu Fei was very depressed. In fact, he thought of chasing Water-Breaking Arrow like a shadow and killing him until he didn't have the strength to carry out his plan. However, as Han family young master said, although it might stop Water-Breaking Arrow, it would greatly worsen the relationship between Water Depth and Sword Demon. If Water Depth only hated Gu Fei, then Gu Fei wasn't afraid. The key was that he would bring Sword Demon along. Gu Fei couldn't do such an irresponsible thing. So troublesome. "I'll go take a look." Gu Fei sighed and got up. Sitting in the tavern obviously wasn't a good idea. No matter how troublesome it was, life had to go on. Of course, the game had to go on. Under a big tree on the edge of Shady City, the sword ghost stood quietly under the tree. The grease on his face had been washed away, and the camouflage clothes and badges he had worn had been neatly packed away. Not long after, Lu Ke hurried out of the woods. "You said he already knows?" Not in the mood to greet him, Lu Ku went straight to the point. Sword Demon nodded and didn't speak. Lu Ku was also silent. No one would be more familiar with water depth than she was. She could fully predict how water depth would react after knowing this. Otherwise, they wouldn't have to do it in private. They could have called water depth to suspect the new water-breaking arrow. So troublesome. Lu Ku finally spoke. Playing a stupid game has a lot of trouble. How did he find out? Maybe it's water-breaking arrow. Maybe he found out that we've been following him, so he called water depth to follow us. Sword Demon wasn't stupid. He also had some inferences about what Gu Fei and Han family young master noticed, but he wouldn't think from the most vicious angle. His inference even left room for water-breaking arrow to explain. I think it's also this guy's doing. Lu Ku said. But the problem is that water depth doesn't believe it. Sword Demon said. Of course he doesn't believe it. Even if there's evidence in front of him, he might not believe it. You should be very clear because you're the same as him. Sometimes I really don't understand. What's the point of deceiving yourself and refusing to believe it? Lu Ku said. You don't understand, so you're not the same kind of person as us. Sword Demon said. I don't have time to play deep with you. It's so annoying. What do we do now? Lu Ku said. I'll tell you first. He'll probably guess that you're also involved. Sword Demon said. Of course. Look at your clothes and your makeup. Hey, how did you wash away the makeup I worked so hard on? Lu Ku said halfway and actually noticed this kind of thing. It's useless, so of course I washed it. What a waste of time and energy. What about the 2 badges? Don't throw them away. They were made with a lot of money. Lu Ku said. Here. Sword Demon gave the badges and camouflage clothes to Lu Ku. Throw the clothes away. I'm annoyed when I see them. There's nothing to do. Why are you doing jungle warfare? Lu Ku waved her hand. Did water depth find you? Sword Demon asked. I don't know. Lu Ku said. Why are you still angry at this time? Hurry up and think of a way to solve it. Sword Demon said. Who's angry? I really don't know. You just sent me a message saying that water depth knows and I immediately blocked him. I don't want to see him before this matter is solved. It's annoying. Lu Ku said. How do we solve it? Sword Demon looked at the sky. Let the guild be destroyed by water-breaking arrow. Let him learn a lesson. Lu Ku clenched her teeth. That's not right. Sword Demon said seriously, the guild belongs to every brother in the guild. It shouldn't be a sacrifice. No matter what, we can't use the guild as a bet. What else can we do? Lu Ku spread her hands. Sword Demon was silent for a long time. Finally, he made up his mind. Let's get rid of water-breaking arrow. What? Lu Ku jumped in fright. She knew very well what this meant. With the current situation, this was the same as breaking ties with water depth and becoming enemies with their entire guild. It's just that, we don't know how many times this water-breaking arrow will be killed before he gives up. If he really does fight to the end, with water depth's personality, he will definitely keep fighting for him. If he doesn't disappear, even if he's only level 10, he will still be a hidden danger. Sword Demon said. I'm asking you. Are you serious? Lu Ku looked at Sword Demon. I'm very serious. Sword Demon looked back. Do you know what this means? Lu Ku said. I know. Sword Demon's expression flashed with a trace of pain. This of course meant that he and Water Depth would never be friends again. Lu Ku continued to look at him. After a long silence, she turned her head to the side. I know that once you've decided on something, no one can change it. So, you make your own decisions. I've already made up my mind. But, do you think this is an effective method? Sword Demon said. You're asking me? Lu Ku asked back. Answer me honestly. Okay. I'll answer you honestly. This method is effective. Lu Ku said, once a war breaks out because of this and water-breaking arrow is killed multiple times, then he will become a pitiful person sheltered by the guild. He will lose the yearning of others. Some people will even get tired of him because of repeated battles for him. Not to mention in online games, levels always speak. If the gap is too big, people will just habitually ignore you. At this time, what bargaining chip does water-breaking arrow have to win the hearts of the guild? Chapter 5:13. Your analysis is correct. After listening to Lu Ku's words, Sword Demon nodded. But you should know that I don't want you to do this at all, Lu Ku said. I know, so just think of it as me going to complete my daily quest. Sword Demon finished speaking and turned to look into the depths of the woods. He was ready to step in, but he suddenly stopped. By the way, there's no need to tell my brothers about this anymore. I refuse. After saying this, Lu Ku turned around and left with the sword ghost. Gu Fei walked on the muddy streets of Shady City. This main city was surrounded by greenery, with a kind of secluded tranquility, and the air was extremely fresh, relaxing. It was such a good place, but he encountered such an annoying thing. What was more annoying was that this matter was mainly related to Sword Demon. If it was only Gu Fei's own trouble, he could deal with it freely. It was because it was someone else's that he was so anxious and felt powerless. Sir, newly released equipment, do you want one? Suddenly, someone said in Gu Fei's ear, making Gu Fei suddenly come back to his senses. Someone was actually close to him, but he didn't notice it at all. He was really distracted. But this flower girl peddling method was unprecedented. Gu Fei turned his head and saw a familiar face. How come it's you? Gu Fei said. I wanted to ask you the same thing. Standing next to Gu Fei was Shi Xiaotian. What are you doing here? Gu Fei said while looking around to see if there were any victims within a few hundred meters who were coming to kill him. It's rare for me to go on a long trip, and now I don't have to act as a group. Of course, I have to stay in each main city. Shi Xiaotian said. A scourge like you, no main city will welcome you. Gu Fei said. That's not necessarily true. I also often contribute to the prosperity of the market economy in the game. On the other hand, when you went out this time, there were huge changes in the level rankings. It seems like a lot of the people who dropped levels were related to you, right? Shi Xiaotian said. I have a clear conscience. Gu Fei said. Shi Xiaotian smiled. Gu Fei was speechless. As a swindler, she did not feel that her actions were shameful. Of course, she could also say that she had a clear conscience. This was a fallacious logic, but there was no way to refute it. Gu Fei had the urge to beat her up. Speaking of which, your emotions are very obvious. It's very dangerous. It will give people like us an opportunity to take advantage of you, Shi Xiaotian suddenly said. The grease on Gu Fei's face had also been wiped clean after leaving the tavern. Since it was no longer necessary, no one wanted to smear their face like that. Is that so? You don't have to worry about it. Gu Fei replied indifferently and was about to walk away when he heard someone shouting from the other end. It was getting closer and closer. Wow, that's too much. Now that it's so troublesome, you brats still have the mood to pick up girls here. Lu Ku walked out of a narrow alley and pointed directly at Gu Fei as she ran over. Where's Sword Demon? Isn't he with you? Gu Fei looked around and didn't see Sword Demon nearby. I was just about to talk to you guys. Sword Demon is preparing to kill water-breaking arrow. Lu Ku said. That's good. Where is he? I'll go help. Gu Fei immediately became spirited. Good my ass. Think about the consequences of this. Lu Ku scolded. Gu Fei frowned. He and the Han family young master had already analyzed the consequences of killing water-breaking arrow. But Sword Demon himself decided to do it. Does this mean that he would rather sacrifice his friendship to help Water Depth protect his guild? This guy. Gu Fei didn't know what to say. This guy, should he be moved or should he say that he's stupid? We have to think of a way that satisfies both sides. Lu Ku looked at Gu Fei. You're saying, a way that allows Sword Demon not to sacrifice himself and also prevents water-breaking arrow's scheme from succeeding? Gu Fei said. N. Lu Ku's eyes were filled with anticipation. I'm not Ishio. Gu Fei's reply. Hey, why are you still joking? What time is this? Lu Ku was annoyed by Gu Fei's disapproving attitude. If you don't do anything, your guild may be destroyed by water-breaking arrow, but Water Depth will understand Sword Demon's friendship with him. If you chase Water-breaking Arrow, you can stop him from destroying your guild, but you will completely lose Water Depth as a friend. This is a choice. Sword Demon has already made his choice, and I know that when he made his choice, he didn't hesitate at all. He won't regret it, and he knows what the ending he wants the most is. Maybe following his wishes is the best. Gu Fei said. What are you talking about? He was forced to make this choice. Do you think he's willing to do this? Lu Ku shouted. Girl, you have to know that because there is no way to satisfy both sides, he can only choose. If there was, we wouldn't be standing here stupidly, right? Gu Fei said. There will always be a way. Lu Ku said. Reality is sometimes cruel. Gu Fei said helplessly. Excuse me. Shi Xiaotian, who was listening on the side, finally couldn't help but say, your topic seems to be very deep. Do you mind telling me what it is? Maybe I can help. For you. Lu Ku asked. A liar. Gu Fei replied. Lu Ku was surprised, but Shi Xiaotian didn't care and even said with a proud tone, and a professional. Fei. Gu Fei snorted. A liar is shameful enough, but what's even more shameful is this guy's proud attitude. It's really unbearable. I say. Shi Xiaotian pointed at Gu Fei and said to Lu Ku, even he is helpless. It's obvious that you've encountered a problem that can't be solved with violence. Maybe you need some knowledge and brains in other areas. You really have a way? Lu Ku asked. Don't try anything when you're in a hurry. Gu Fei said. The two women glared at him together with a strong murderous aura. It's like this. Lu Ku briefly described the matter to Shi Xiaotian. Too unprincipled. Gu Fei muttered. So that's how it is. Shi Xiaotian nodded. It's obvious that the other party has completely grasped that idiot president's character, so they created such a targeted conspiracy. He took advantage of your eagerness to win the battle for the main city and provided you with very valuable abilities to win favor and expectations. Then he entered the guild and upgraded this favor and expectations to trust, obedience, and worship. When the time is right, he will replace that idiot president's position in one fell swoop. Originally, this kind of plan would take a long time to implement, but everything develops very quickly in the game and people's abilities are very intuitive. I think a month's time is enough. Your analysis is very accurate. Lu Ku said. Of course. Show off your abilities and win the trust of others. Gu Fei reminded him from the side. No one paid attention, so Lu Ku added, also, that idiot president you're talking about is my husband. Really? Your husband can build the largest guild in Forest Shade City. It's really amazing. Shi Xiaotian said. Wow, you can't be serious, right? Gu Fei was surprised. Idiot became great in an instant. Wasn't this too obvious? But there's one thing. You said this kind of plan would take a month? Lu Ku said. Shi Xiaotian nodded. This is already considering the game environment. It's very fast. But if the battle for the main city starts within a month, and he hasn't had time to destroy our guild, wouldn't he be busy for nothing? Lu Ku said. You're wrong. What he wants to do is not to destroy, but to replace. He won't even reveal his true intentions before the battle for the main city starts. He will borrow your guild's manpower, material resources, and financial resources to win the battle for the main city. Think about it, who will be the biggest contributor to the victory of the battle for the main city? Shi Xiaotian said. Gu Fei and Lu Ku couldn't help but look at each other. You have trust, popularity, and contributions. If you want to be the guild leader, when the conditions are right, success will follow. After that, I'm afraid the matter of using this to control the main city to seek benefits has nothing to do with you. Shi Xiaotian said. Indeed, this is the perfect plan. Lu Ku said. Shi Xiaotian shrugged and continued. Also, you said you were discovered by him when you were following us? The one who discovered you might not be him, but his accomplices. Accomplices? Lu Ku was surprised. This kind of plan, especially in the relatively simple environment of entering a guild in the game, he shouldn't come in alone to stir things up. He will mix with a group of people, and many times these people will spread some words to promote his position. If he is very cautious, it's not impossible to borrow a few pairs of eyes to pay attention to the movements around him. Shi Xiaotian said. This surprised Gu Fei. When following them, water-breaking arrow passed through Extreme Cold's practice area. There were people everywhere, it was impossible to avoid everyone's eyes. Therefore, the two could only try to avoid being discovered by water-breaking arrow. As for the gazes of others, they could only pretend that they were calmly passing by or practicing. If water-breaking arrow's eyes were hidden among these people, it wouldn't be strange for them to discover the two of them. Speaking of which, the two were very cautious and maintained a distance of 10 meters. Gu Fei couldn't understand how water-breaking arrow discovered the two of them. This explanation was reasonable. There doesn't seem to be anyone who joined the guild with water-breaking arrow. Lu Ku said. Joining at the same time is too conspicuous, they shouldn't do this. But those who joined around the time he joined are very suspicious. Shi Xiaotian said. Gu Fei suddenly thought of something, it can't be soup and white sand, right? These two were new. If they were water-breaking arrow's accomplices, then was there a need to say anything? The first time Lu Ku introduced them to water-breaking arrow, they must have already been exposed. No, these two can't be them. Lu Ku flatly denied. In fact, they might not be new to the guild. Maybe the other party has been planting people in your guild, or bribing people. Shi Xiaotian said. Bribing people? Gu Fei felt that this matter was getting more and more complicated and exaggerated. Yes, if the manipulator behind the scenes is a studio or some interest group, bribing is not impossible. Shi Xiaotian said. Butterfly not. Maybe there are people who don't like Miss Shi's appearance, but we need more knowledge and brains. Cough, I stole the words. Chapter 5:14. If it's a studio, they can offer benefits that normal guilds can't. Shi Xiaotian said. I understand. Lu Ku nodded. Studios and guilds were two completely different groups. To put it bluntly, guilds were nothing more than an entertainment group for players to gather together. It was a fellowship. Even at the top level of Extreme Frost, it could only give players a sense of spiritual satisfaction. Apart from that, the benefits of game resources were only limited to within the game. Studios were different. This was a benefit group with a clear organization and division of labor. The members received a real salary. In this way, it was easy to recruit a few temporary employees from the guild with the more tangible benefits of cash. In the face of undisguised benefits, there weren't many people who could maintain their integrity. Hey, you've analyzed so much. Do you have any ideas? Gu Fei said. We have to have the best of both worlds. You heard what I meant by the best of both worlds, right? Lu Ku said. Shi Xiaolan smiled. Wait. Wait for what? The two didn't understand. Since you said that this person has some real ability, then why not make full use of his ability? After winning the battle for the main city with his help, then find someone to disguise as a revenant from another guild and launch a sneak attack on the core members of the guild. Of course, you can pretend to miss your husband, but for water-breaking arrow, you must ruthlessly kill him and quickly drop his level in a short period of time. At this time, no matter how outstanding his ability is, without the support of a level, he won't be able to convince people in the game. I believe that there wouldn't be any idiots who would support a level 35 person to be the guild leader. As long as the person you find doesn't give the game away, I believe that your husband won't suspect you. How about it? Shi Xiaotian said as he looked at the two. Gu Fei and Lu Ku were both speechless. All they had been thinking about was how to stop the water-breaking arrow from carrying out his conspiracy. They had never thought of taking advantage of the water-breaking arrow and then ruthlessly abandoning him like a wild dog. This idea is very satisfying. Lu Ku nodded first. However, it seems that you still haven't been able to see through the danger of the water-breaking arrow. This doesn't seem to be of any help in mending your relationship. Gu Fei more or less felt that Shi Xiaotian was not happy with his suggestions, so he had to find some flaws. When you were talking about having the best of both worlds, you didn't mention anything about mending the relationship, did you? Shi Xiaotian said. No, but if you can do that, it would be perfect. After nitpicking, Gu Fei purposely created another problem. If he wanted to repair the cracks that had already appeared, he would have to show depth enough evidence to prove that there was a problem with the water-breaking arrow. However, in the game where it was impossible to track the water-breaking arrow, and investigating and collecting evidence was very difficult, doing this would be much more difficult than breaking the water-breaking arrow's levels. Yes, young lady, do you have a solution? Winning the main city battle isn't important at all. There's no need to pay attention to it. Lucas said, I see. Then to what extent will your husband believe the water-breaking arrow's plot? Shi Xiaotian asked. That guy is sometimes very smart, but sometimes he's very stubborn. To be honest, no matter how much evidence there is, if he doesn't believe it, then there's nothing anyone can do. Lucas said, Don't tell me that when the truth comes out, he'll be like this. Shi Xiaotian said as he grabbed Gu Fei's collar and yelled, Brother, tell me this isn't true. You must have some difficulties, right? Will it be like this? Gu Fei slapped her hand away. Lu Ku, whose face had been tense all this time, let out a rare "Pulef." She shook her head and said, I don't know about this, but it shouldn't be this old-fashioned. But to do this, it's very difficult and the risk is very high. Shi Xiaotian said. So you've got an idea? Lu Ku was overjoyed. This water-breaking arrow should have a studio background. Then we'll pretend to be someone from another studio to poach him. In the process, we'll test his intentions. Who knows, we might be able to find out something. Shi Xiaotian said. Then arrange for water depth to coincidentally hear your conversation? Lu Ku asked. She was confident that she could make water depth come up with such a coincidence. I'm just afraid that this guy will be too cautious. When the time comes, he won't give anyone the opportunity to listen in. Shi Xiaotian said. Then what should we do? If we don't let water depth see, then wouldn't everything be in vain? Gu Fei said. Have you heard of a spell called Black Memory Box? Shi Xiaotian said. Gu Fei, this game illiterate, of course shook his head blankly. Lu Ku's eyes lit up. I know. When this spell is cast, it can record the surrounding scene and sound, then seal it in a magic scroll. When the scroll is used again, it can replay the scene and sound. You want to use this spell to record the scene of your conversation with water-breaking arrow. There's such a thing? How come I've never heard of it? Gu Fei was flabbergasted. You men only know how to fight and kill. This kind of skill that has nothing to do with fighting, would you care about it? Lu Ku looked at him with disdain. This can only be a backup plan. If you can let your husband see the scene, then that would be the best. But if there's no such opportunity, then this is the only way. Shi Xiaotian said. The problem is that I've never heard of anyone who knows this spell. Lu Ku said. Even if someone knows it, it won't work. When the time comes, there'll only be me and water-breaking arrow. If I'm the one to release it, then it must be a skill scroll. Shi Xiaotian said. Let me ask around. Gu Fei said. The two girls looked at Gu Fei in astonishment. Hearing his confident tone, could it be that this guy had some great connections? In the end, after only 20 seconds, they heard Gu Fei say, No. That's too fast. The two girls were flabbergasted. I just asked about the skinny waist dance. Even she doesn't have it. Gu Fei said. There's no demand for this kind of thing. Even if someone had it, they'd probably just use it for their own entertainment. There's no need for it to circulate in the market. Shi Xiaotian analyzed. Then where would a monster drop this kind of thing? Lu Ku asked. Let me ask around. Gu Fei came again. Who are you asking? The two girls had already grasped Gu Fei's train of thought. Brother Yu. Gu Fei calmly replied. If he didn't ask Brother Yu, then who else could he ask? As expected, when the two girls heard this name, they became quiet. Brother Yu, who could gather information and fill in the blanks, could sometimes control the situation. Black Memory Box? What do you want the skill for? Brother Yu wanted to know everything. It's very useful. Just tell me where it drops. Gu Fei said. I've never really cared about this thing. I'll go ask around. Brother Yu said. Hurry up. Gu Fei urged. But Brother, you didn't feel annoyed by this kind of request. It was important to know that this was the joy of his game. He liked to gather information and he enjoyed giving this information back to players who needed it. With a player like Gu Fei asking questions, it gave Brother Yu a great sense of satisfaction. You sit here first. I'll go offline and help Qianli ask around. After sending the message to Gu Fei, Brother Yu said to his desk mate, the Han family young master. That guy? What does he want to know? Han family young master creased his eyebrows. Black memory box. He's probably busy with the thing you're talking about, right? Brother Yu said. Black memory box? Han family young master had obviously heard of this thing. This guy wants to lure the snake out of its hole? I'll go first. Brother Yu waved his hand at Han family young master. Go. Han family young master shook the wine glass in his hand, saying goodbye. Brother Yu has already gone to ask around. I believe we'll have an answer soon. Gu Fei announced to the two girls. If Brother Yu hadn't heard of this thing, then it would be a bit difficult. But since Lu Ku knew about it, Brother Yu had obviously heard of it. It seemed like it wasn't a mysterious thing and the difficulty of obtaining it wouldn't be too high. And while we're waiting for the news, you guys tell me the water-breaking arrow in detail. Shi Xiaotian said. Before that, isn't there something more important? Gu Fei said. The two girls looked at him. Has Sword Demon already made his move? Gu Fei asked Lu Ku. Yeah. Lu Ku repeatedly hit her head. Sword Demon had indeed entered the forest. She hurriedly sent a message to Sword Demon. After 2 or 3 back and forth, Lu Ku was so angry that she stomped her feet. This stupid brain, I'm lying to him. If I didn't have an idea, I wouldn't care about his life or death. Where is he? Gu Fei asked. He went to the forest, but no one told him the water-breaking arrow's location. He shouldn't be able to find it so easily, right? Lu Ku said. You guys only circled such a large area, so it's hard to say. Forget it, I'll go find him. You two continue. Gu Fei turned around and ran. I'll help you find the water-breaking arrow's location. Lu Ku shouted. But Gu Fei responded and went further and further away. Lu Ku suddenly hit her head again. I don't have him as a friend. Add him. Shi Xiaotian said. He wouldn't have it open right. Lu Ku said. I'll inform him. Shi Xiaotian sent a message to Gu Fei. Lu Ku's friend list was indeed full, but at this time she couldn't care about it. She deleted one and added Gu Fei. After she finished, she let out a sigh of relief. Seeing Shi Xiaoan beside her, she was startled and thought of something. She hurriedly said, Miss, what's your name? Shi Xiaotian. I really have to thank you. Lu Ku was very grateful. You're wrong. I'm not helping others, I just think this is very interesting. I'm looking forward to deceiving that water-breaking arrow guy. This is my hobby, that's all. Shi Xiaotian said. Your hobby is really unique, huh? No one would like a swindler, but it was hard for Lu Ku to hate this girl who claimed to be a swindler, especially when the other party really helped her. However, to actually treat crime as a hobby, was she sick? Lu Ku thought like this in her heart, but she asked, what do you want to know about the water-breaking arrow? Chapter 5:15. In Shady Forest City, Gu Fei hurried along while trying to send a message to Sword Demon. Hey, don't do it yet. I really have an idea. Gu Fei said. System notification. The user you sent the message to has not turned on message receiving. Gu Fei was helpless. He originally thought that with his usual temperament, maybe Sword Demon would believe him. But now, Sword Demon had turned off the message switch. He had really made up his mind. This guy. Gu Fei sighed as he stepped into the forest. Dark, hazy, no one could be seen anywhere. But Gu Fei knew that not being able to see didn't mean that there was no one. This place was close to the extreme cold training ground. Maybe there were people crawling in the grass somewhere, and who knew when they would suddenly jump out and scare him. Just as Gu Fei was thinking about this, he heard the rustling sound of branches and leaves rubbing against each other. Have they appeared? Gu Fei looked around expressionlessly. Sure enough, he saw the soldiers in camouflage. They were all staring at Gu Fei and asking, "What are you doing?" "Looking for someone," Gu Fei replied. He didn't stop and continued into the forest. The group of people had never seen such an ignorant person. They immediately drew their bows and roared, "Stop! Who allowed you to go in?" Gu Fei didn't even turn his head. At this time, he wasn't in the mood to waste time here. He continued to move quickly into the depths of the forest. Extreme Cold's team was stunned. They didn't expect this kind of situation to happen. According to normal logic, when they asked this question, the other party should have stopped and then everyone should have a face-to-face negotiation, right? Just like this person. He treated them as if they didn't exist. The team entered a temporary mental block and didn't know what to do. "Quick! Stop him!" Finally, someone reacted first. Their group was at the outermost edge of Extreme Cold's reserved area. They were leveling up and practicing traps, and they were also responsible for stopping strangers who didn't belong to their guild from getting in the way. Most players came here to level up. As soon as they heard that a guild had claimed the space, they turned around and left. Who would be stupid enough to steal kills from a guild? However, the person before him was behaving abnormally. There was an 80% chance that he was here to cause trouble. The group of players roared and chased after him. The players who had lived in this forest for several months were very used to walking and running in the forest. Gu Fei's speed was greatly reduced in such an environment, and he was obviously no match for these guys if he competed directly. However, the biggest advantage of the forest was that it was easy to hide in. Gu Fei used teleportation and suddenly floated behind a tree. A group of people stopped and rubbed their eyes frantically. What they saw was that the guy suddenly disappeared into thin air as he ran. Everyone wondered if there was something wrong with their eyes, but they soon got the answer from the expressions of the others. "What's going on?" everyone was asking. "Disconnected," someone guessed. For a moment, this seemed to be the most reasonable answer. A group of people rushed to the spot where Gu Fei had disappeared and surrounded him. "When he comes up, kill him immediately," the team leader ordered. "Understood." Everyone copied their weapons. By this time, Gu Fei had already changed his direction and swaggered off. At this time, he had already obtained the coordinates of the breaking water arrow. Although the sword demon didn't have this information, this was his goal. No matter what method he used, he would eventually find this place. Gu Fei hoped that he could have a chance encounter with the sword demon like this. However, the previous scene made Gu Fei feel that this was a bit too rash. It seemed that disguising was still very necessary. Thinking about it, Gu Fei put on the camouflage mage robe again. Although the oil on his face had been wiped off, putting on a hat and covering his face with a cloth was also common attire. He believed that no one would make a fuss. More importantly, the fake badge was worn by Gu Fei in a conspicuous place on his chest. This way, the effect was obvious. Gu Fei tried to swagger past a team of people, but the other party didn't have any strange feelings towards Gu Fei at all. Getting rid of these harassment, Gu Fei had no other scruples. He quickly ran to the location of the breaking water arrow that Lu Ku had pointed out. Sure enough, that guy was there teaching a team of people, and water depth was also at the side. If the breaking water arrow was as disgusting as garbage, then seeing water depth made Gu Fei angry like seeing a disobedient child. The urge to beat him up was quite urgent. However, this matter could be temporarily postponed. First, he would follow the breaking water arrow and meet the sword demon. Woods. It was the woods again. Recently, he frequently went in and out of the woods, each time with a different mood, but none was more complicated than now. After simply replying to a few messages sent by Lu Ku, the sword demon closed the message reception. Since things had come to this, he didn't want to waver in his determination. Looking at the dagger in his hand, the sword demon took a deep breath. It would be nice to have a cigarette at this time. After approaching the extremely cold training area, the sword demon entered stealth mode and walked quietly in the woods. While paying attention to his feet, he also paid attention to the movements around him. Every area here could be a training ground for a team, and at this time, the sword demon wanted to find such an area. A team of people, or a place with traps, were all representative of such an area. The sword demon knew that the breaking water arrow's activity habit was to rotate between each team and give guidance. So, as long as he stared at a team and waited patiently, there would always be a time when he would encounter the breaking water arrow. This method seemed a bit rigid, but it would definitely be effective. This was the style of the sword demon. Do what you're sure of, say what you're sure of. Soon, the sword ghost came across a small team that was busy. What they were busy with was exactly the same as what he did with Ai and the others yesterday. This place is fine, the sword demon said in his heart and began to carefully observe the terrain of this place. He believed in Gu Fei's judgment that the breaking water arrow must be a very difficult opponent. To deal with such an opponent, the cross-level skill Fog Ambush was the trump card in the sword demon's mind. Coupled with the attack power of the long and short sais after mastering both hands, the sword demon believed that as long as he hit the opponent, it would be enough to complete an instant kill. He had the ability to instantly kill, but he had to make sure that he hit. If he missed, and the breaking water arrow had the skill of Gu Fei, the sword demon knew what would happen to him. He must first sort out the surrounding environment. While observing, the sword demon even personally walked forward to try it out. There were advantages and disadvantages to using Fog Ambush in the woods. The advantage was that the shade of the trees in the woods was very similar to the pervasive fog. They both rejected the sunlight. In this way, the flaw that the shadow of the fog ambush detected by Gu Xian would not disappear during the disappearing stage could be ignored. The disadvantage was that there were too many obstacles on the ground in the woods, which would definitely affect the speed of the fog ambush. Only by observing the terrain clearly could he try to play to his strengths and avoid his weaknesses. In addition, the sword demon also had to consider how to escape unscathed after being hit by the breaking water arrow. When the breaking water arrow arrived, a group of people here would come out to greet him. The sword demon's opponent was actually not just one person. How to escape under the eyes of so many people was also a problem. He was not afraid of death, but only by keeping his level could he retain his strength, and then he could kill the breaking water arrow a second time, a third time, or, when the breaking water arrow left, he would quietly follow and find a chance to attack? The sword demon had such an idea. Although he could avoid being besieged in this way, he might lose the advantage of occupying the terrain. The sword demon looked at the terrain he had just studied and calculated. In the end, he still decided to attack here. At least this way, he had a higher chance of successfully killing. As for how to safely evacuate, it still depended on the reaction of others. Maybe if he attacked fast enough, they wouldn't be able to react at all. After everything was settled, the sword demon chose a position and quietly began to wait. After an unknown amount of time, he only saw the small team of players in front of him lead the monsters into the trap formation and kill wave after wave, but the breaking water arrow still did not appear. The sword demon did not have the slightest impatience. He was sure that as long as the breaking water arrow was online, it would always turn to this place. But what if he went offline? Suddenly thinking of this possibility, the sword demon could not help but scratch his head. This was also a top priority. He had prepared so well, but the breaking water arrow was not in the game at all. How awkward would that be? Thinking about this, the sword demon was ready to open the message to ask Lu Ku, at least to confirm whether she was online or not. In the end, the moment he raised his eyes, he found that there was still a figure in the distance moving in this direction. Is it him? The sword demon was not sure, but there was a strong premonition in his heart. Speaking of which, even if it was really the breaking water arrow, the sword demon might not be able to recognize it because of the makeup. One of the reasons why he chose this method of defending was that he needed others to help him identify the breaking water arrow. If he had to find it himself, he suspected that he would pass by the breaking water arrow without knowing. The figure was getting closer and closer. The sword demon found that the small team of players who were originally lying in ambush had already drilled out of the bushes and were ready to meet them. It's him. The sword demon was certain in his heart. While watching the approaching figure, he began to choose his position. However, after the figure completely drilled out of the shadows of the trees, the sword demon suddenly froze. Because he saw that there was not one person coming, but two. Although one of them was also wearing makeup, the sword demon could still recognize that it was water depth. This change caught the sword demon somewhat unprepared. He was completely mentally prepared to assassinate the breaking water arrow, but he did not expect it to be in front of water depth. After making this decision, he did not hesitate or regret it. But when water depth stood in front of him, the sword demon could not help but hesitate. Making a move now meant that he would be breaking ties with water depth. After all, this was a completely different feeling. Chapter 5:16. Thank you for your hard work. Sword demon was still hesitating, but the approaching water depth and water-breaking arrow had already started to express their condolences to their comrades. It was a pity that the players in the team didn't respond with the slogan for the guild, so their condolences seemed imperfect. However, water-breaking arrow's position was perfect. So perfect that it made sword demon's heart beat faster. At this position, at this distance, not using a fog ambush would make people feel guilty. Was it guilt? He couldn't do it in front of water depth. It seemed to be because of guilt. However, since it was a choice, he had to bear all the consequences. From the moment he decided to do this, he was already destined to ignore water depth's gaze. It didn't seem to matter whether he was there or not, right? Moreover, considering the purpose of his trip, it was even better to do it in front of water depth. This could sound the alarm to water-breaking arrow and let him see his determination. Even if water depth misunderstood me, I will definitely stop your plan. Do it. After a few seconds of consideration, sword demon had already made up his mind. Fog ambush. As soon as the skill was used, the air seemed to explode. Suddenly, a black figure had already shot out. The halo of an exquisite weapon unique to long kill short sai left a dim light in the high-speed movement. It was breathtaking. Who is it? As the players subconsciously shouted, sword demon had already rushed to 2 meters in front of water-breaking arrow. Disappeared. The figure suddenly disappeared. Everyone was at a loss. Was it an illusion just now? It seemed like someone was rushing over here. Everyone's thoughts couldn't keep up with the development of the situation. In the next second, the figure disappeared, water-breaking arrow suddenly flew back, and the figure appeared again. Sword demon. 4 eyes met, water depth gritted his teeth. Guild leader. Seeing water-breaking arrow fly away, and water depth was also in a place where the opponent could attack with a raise of his hand, the people who were a little too far away to protect shouted anxiously. From these people's surprised, anxious, and concerned gazes, sword demon suddenly found a clear answer. He was even more convinced that his choice was not wrong. He had a friendship with water depth, but the guild had an even greater friendship with water depth. This could not be destroyed by water-breaking arrow. The last bit of entanglement in his heart was resolved, but the sword demon couldn't show a victorious smile because he knew that the attack just now wasn't completely successful. Broken water arrow's reaction was astonishing, and it was even more certain that he was the target of sword demon's attack. In the instant that he was attacked, he blocked and dodged. Although he was still sent flying, sword demon was very clear that the damage of his attack was not completely released. Being sent flying might be a method to dissolve the impact. With my current attack power, I might not even need to deal full damage to kill him. Sword demon was looking forward to it. After all, the opponent was just an archer with low HP. However, in the thicket where the water-breaking arrow flew out, there was no white flash of death. It was regretful and helpless. Sword demon knew that this attack didn't hit. He didn't have the ability to directly assassinate water-breaking arrow. This guy's skill was even more terrifying than he expected. But sword demon wouldn't be discouraged because of this. If the first time didn't work, there would be a second, a third. After sending water-breaking arrow flying, although he thought a lot, sword demon didn't even delay for a second in action. One attack didn't work and was killed instead? This kind of heroic assassin legend, sword demon didn't want it to happen to him. He wanted to save his level to attack water-breaking arrow a second time, a third time. Sword demon, who was using quickness, had already turned around and rushed out. He had already chosen the route of retreat. However, he had just rushed out a few steps when he suddenly heard a soft sound. Sword demon's heart tightened and his feet tightened. It's a trap. However, this route was carefully chosen by him, and he was sure that there wouldn't be any traps on this path. Sword Demon turned around and saw that Waterdepth's bow was still aimed at him, expressionless. It's his trap arrow? Sword Demon sighed. He knew that Waterdepth had such a skill. Sure enough, I shouldn't have acted in front of this guy. His existence is simply a variable. The corner of Sword Ghost's mouth revealed a trace of a bitter smile. He knew that the traps and arrows in the depths of the water could be connected seamlessly. He had no choice but to sacrifice himself. He already saw that the arrows on the bowstrings of the others were suddenly released towards him. After dropping this level, it would be even more difficult to kill Water-breaking Arrow. This was the only regret in Sword Demon's heart before he closed his eyes. A series of soft sounds suddenly appeared in his ears. Sword Demon didn't feel the pain of being shot, nor did he feel the teleportation after death. He opened his eyes and saw a black figure already blocking in front of him. That familiar, valiant, and perverted figure. Wearing too much is really a hindrance. This person muttered as he pulled an arrow from his shoulder. But at least there's this little benefit. A series of arrows fell from the camouflage mage robe in his left hand. Everyone was dumbfounded. He had actually used this jacket to wrap up all the arrows that had been shot by everyone else. Gu Fei's skills, no matter when and where, would cause obstacles in other people's thinking. I'm not in a good mood right now. Throwing away the camouflage robe, Gu Fei waved his hand and pulled out his sword. The tip of the sword swept across the ground, and the wind from the sword rolled up the dead leaves flying, beautifully drawing a circle. This is my circle of swords. Those who step into it die. Once upon a time, Gu Fei bluffed like this in moonlit Night City. His purpose was just to scare others and then conveniently escape. However, this time he was very serious. Even if Waterdepth stepped in at this moment, Gu Fei wouldn't show any mercy. Those who entered the circle were enemies, and there would be no mercy. Fuck, what are you pretending to be? Someone immediately shouted back. A bolt of lightning fell from the sky and disappeared. This isn't pretending, it's strength. Gu Fei's sword was still pointed at the place where the cursing person disappeared. Everyone's hands holding their bows trembled slightly. He wondered if shooting the arrow would count as stepping into his sword circle. Everyone was subconsciously thinking about this question. Of course, this kind of word game didn't have any meaning at this time. The brave brothers from before didn't step into the circle and were still instantly killed. No one dared to make any rash movements. Everyone looked at Waterdepth together. Do you think you can still escape? Do you know how many of us are in this forest? Waterdepth knew that it was time for him to speak. Do you know how many of you will die before you kill me? Gu Fei went tit for tat. Silence. As the leader, you have to think of your brothers. Gu Fei said. Speaking of brothers, Waterdepth suddenly remembered the breaking arrow that flew out and hurriedly looked back. Don't bother looking for him. He's at the resurrection point. His position just now was too perfect. I couldn't help but kill him with my sword, Gu Fei said and turned to look at the sword specter. You won't blame me, right? It affected your quest. No, I'll just do it again. Sword Demon laughed. Makes sense. Gu Fei nodded and then looked at Waterdepth. Leader Waterdepth, we're going to leave now. If you want to stop us, then come. But remember to pick someone who isn't afraid of death. Otherwise, they'll blame you after they die. Without another word, Gu Fei and Sword Demon turned and left. Leader. The other players couldn't stand it anymore. They turned on the impulsive switch, and everyone put on the unafraid of death aura. Waterdepth shook his head. Now isn't the best time. We can't afford this kind of loss right now. Don't forget, we're in the middle of preparing for the main city war. We can deal with this kind of trouble later. Oh. Everyone replied. Notify everyone, don't provoke them. A small team isn't their match. Waterdepth said. Understood. The few people present had clearly seen the strength of the two. Sword Demon's sudden attack, Gu Fei's insane skills, and the instant kill with a raise of his hand, these weren't things normal players could do. With Extreme Frost's current team of 10 people, it really wasn't enough to wipe out these two. Thus, the two walked elegantly through the forest. Extreme Frost crouched in the dark and looked up. "Why are you here?" Sword Demon asked. "To find you, boss." Gu Fei said. "Don't try to persuade me." Sword Demon easily guessed Gu Fei's intentions. "No, it's just that we have a new plan," Gu Fei succinctly explained. "Oh." Sword Demon was happy to see Breaking Water Arrow's face exposed. He obviously had no reason to reject such a plan. "But who's going? Brother you?" Sword Demon asked. This person was obviously the key to the success or failure of this plan. They, who had met Breaking Water Arrow face to face, obviously couldn't do it. Even if they covered their faces, it was hard to say if they wouldn't be exposed. The risk was too great. Apart from these, it seemed like the other three in the elite group could be trusted. However, unscathed in battle and Yutian Shinming, this one big and one small, weren't serious. This kind of precise work was completely unsuitable. It seemed like Brother Yu was the only choice. "No, there's a professional," Gu Fei said regretfully. "The girl who stole your dagger before, remember?" Even though it had happened 500 years ago, Sword Ghost still remembered it. The impression he had of Gu Fei was too deep. His trust in Gu Fei had only started at that time. "It's her? How did she get involved?" Sword Demon was very inexplicable. For him, Shi Xiaonan was a complete stranger. "Walking on the street, I bumped into her. Then Lu Ku came to talk to me about something. She heard it again, and then she had a way. Weird, right? But the most important thing at present is actually the memory black box skill hasn't been found yet. Brother Yu has already inquired about it," Gu Fei said. "Oh." While talking, the two returned to Forest Shade City. "Okay, you go find Lu Ku and see how the plan is going." Gu Fei waved to Sword Demon. "Where are you going?" Sword Demon asked quickly. Gu Fei's move was obviously to separate. "Go offline, boss. I've been looking for you in the woods for a long time. What time is it now? I still have to go to work tomorrow." Gu Fei waved his hand, turned around, and left. The Sword Ghost stood where he was, watching the familiar, powerful, and perverted figure walk further and further away, disappearing at the corner of the street. Chapter 517. Of course, Lu Ku and Shi Xiaotian didn't just stand on the street and talk. After Gu Fei left, the two randomly found a tavern and sat down in the corner. Although they blocked the depth of the water, the guild channel was always open. Lu Ku would pay attention to it from time to time. She knew that if Water-Breaking Arrow was assassinated, the guild channel would definitely be lively. In the end, things didn't go according to one's wishes. The more one didn't want to see something, the more it would happen. Lu Ku waited on tenterhooks. Finally, the guild channel exploded with activity. She went in and saw that Water-Breaking Arrow had been killed, but the guild leader's order was not to tangle with those two. Was there a need to say who those two people were? Lu Ku didn't know what happened. She thought about how Gu Fei said he was going to find someone, but in the end he became an accomplice. Her heart was filled with anger. Then she saw Water-Breaking Arrow's righteous attitude in the guild channel. "Brothers, don't worry. Focus on the main city battle and don't be impulsive because of personal grudges." Lu Ku was so angry that she couldn't say anything. Observing people's expressions was undoubtedly Shi Xiaotian's strong suit. He quickly noticed that Lu Ku's expression wasn't right and immediately thought that something had happened. After asking carefully, Lu Ku slapped the table and replied, "Those two. What happened?" "They still killed that Water-Breaking Arrow." Lu Ku said, "As long as we can get information from him, it doesn't matter." Shi Xiaotian smiled. That's true." Lu Ku nodded. But even so, these two people's reckless actions still needed to be seriously criticized. Looking at the orders in the guild channel, it was clear that these two weren't assassinating, but directly confronting each other. Fortunately, the guild looked at the big picture and didn't rush up to kill them. Otherwise, the two sides would fight to the death and it would be hard to end the situation. Especially for Lu Ku, after all, Gu Fei and Sword Demon could easily leave and never contact each other, but she couldn't elope with them. Right now she blocked the depth of the water, but sooner or later, they would have to talk. In the end, Lu Ku was the pitiful person who had no choice. She was the one who hoped the two sides could have a harmonious relationship. Don't be angry, don't be angry. Xiaotian saw that Lu Ku was still angry and quickly comforted her. An angry woman isn't beautiful. She will age faster and have spots on her skin. Drink some water, take a deep breath, and remember some happy things. Drink? It's useless in the game. Lu Ku said. You can't drink in the game. I'm not leaving. I'm waiting to scold the two of them. Lu Ku said that she guessed that the two of them would definitely come to meet them after they escaped, so she didn't contact them and continued to wait like the Empress Dowager. Sure enough, not long after, the Sword Ghost sent a message. Where are you? Not long, Sword Demon to say, Maple Tavern. Maple. Maple, Lu Ku replied. Maple Leaf Tavern. Sword Ghost found the location of the tavern on the street and hastened his pace. He pushed open the door and glanced around. Then he saw Lu Ku and the swindler girl sitting in the corner. Sword Demon was just about to step forward, but when he saw Lu Ku's clear profile, he immediately noticed that something was wrong. This was clearly the prelude to a storm. The Sword Demon didn't want to be the petrel soaring in the storm. He decided to avoid the sharp edge, pretend to be lost, go out and circle around again. Just as he was about to go out carefully, he saw that the swindler girl had already seen him and was pouting in his direction. Crap! This word flashed through the Sword Demon's mind. He saw Lu Ku turn around and saw that he was looking at her but intended to leave through the door. He immediately flipped the table. How dare you run? As soon as he finished speaking, Lu Ku had already rushed over with swift movement. The dagger in her hand also shone with a cold light. It was obvious that it was not an ordinary weapon. Sword Demon didn't dare to be negligent and quickly raised his dagger. Two agile professions, two agile people, instantly launched a fierce battle in the small space of the tavern. Movement, rolling, stabbing, all kinds of skills and attack methods were displayed one after another. It was too much for the eyes to take in. Finally, Lu Ku rushed to Sword Demon's position after a half-turn. She picked up a bench and swung it straight at the back of Sword Demon's head. I told you to run! Lu Ku shouted and the bench hit accurately. Sword Demon only felt a buzz in his head. His head didn't bloom because of this. He was hit by a sap. Lu Ku threw the bench away and turned to Sword Demon with her hands on her hips. Sword Demon helplessly squeezed out a bitter smile. He couldn't speak during the sap. It's okay. Everyone, continue. Seeing the players carefully preparing to slip out of the tavern, Lu Ku quickly smiled sweetly to appease everyone. At this time, Sword Demon was hit by the sap. Xiaotian also walked over. Lu Ku immediately began the interrogation. Where's that guy? She asked Gu Fei first. Lu Ku didn't want to criticize him twice. He went offline. Sword Demon said. Lu Ku looked at her friends list. He really wasn't online. He's lucky. The lucky one is you. Sword Demon was honest. He could imagine that if Lu Ku roared and rushed at Gu Fei, she would have been thrown to the ground and groaned. I can prove it. Xiaotian said, that guy doesn't have the demeanor of a gentleman. He still knows how to be modest to a lady. You can tell? Sword Demon was surprised. So was Lu Ku. In terms of real online game level, Lu Ku was at least 2 levels lower than Sword Demon. Although the parallel world was subversive compared to previous games, he had already adapted to it after playing for so long. The two of them hadn't fought in this game, but after a few rounds, Sword Demon knew that Lu Ku was still not his opponent. The gap was even bigger than before. Compared to the previous mouse and keyboard swinging, this game was more difficult. Sword Demon knew Lu Ku. He knew that she wouldn't put in any hard work to study. Her habit was to look at the strategy summaries of her predecessors and then practice a few moves. In a game with such a high degree of freedom, this was obviously not enough. It wasn't surprising that Lu Ku's level was a little behind the times. As for Lu Ku, she knew that she definitely wasn't Sword Demon's opponent. But she also knew that Sword Demon would always give her some leeway during the sparring. He wouldn't embarrass her. So this battle looked fierce and gorgeous. But the two tacitly knew that this was just a fake match. They just didn't expect that Shi Xiaotian, this girl, could actually see it. Amazing! Sword Demon praised. To be able to see the inner meaning, she naturally had a certain level of skill in the game. A liar deserved to be despised, but a high level of game was also worthy of praise. Shi Xiaotian just smiled. It's nothing. I have a natural sense of smell for deceptive things. Come, go back and sit. Lu Ku patted the two of them. After giving Sword Demon a bench, her anger had basically dissipated. When they returned to the corner and Luoluo sat, no one spoke for a while. Sword Demon's expression was a little uncomfortable. In fact, letting a liar help, Sword Demon felt that it was a bit inappropriate. However, he also felt that this girl seemed to have a close relationship with Gu Fei, so he didn't mention it to Gu Fei. Don't mind it too much. Shi Xiaotian suddenly said, I'm not helping you. I just think it's fun and I'm very interested in playing. Sword Demon didn't expect his thoughts to be seen through. Don't worry about him. He's stubborn. Lu Ku more or less guessed Sword Demon's intentions from her understanding of Sword Demon. She was really a little afraid that this guy would stubbornly refuse the help from a liar. Lu Ku didn't have such scruples, so she took advantage of Shi Xiaotian's statement to follow the Sword Demon's lead. Sword Demon was helpless and had to follow their wishes. He asked, how's the plan going? Qianli said that he went to find Brother Yu to inquire about the black memory box. There's no news yet. This thing is very important, Lu Ku said. Sword Demon glanced at his friend's list and nodded. Brother Yu isn't here yet. He's been gone for a long time. Brother Yu went to inquire about the news and Gu Fei went to find Sword Demon at the same time. Now that both of them had returned, there was still no news from Brother Yu. Don't worry. This thing isn't a rare item, right? Brother Yu will inquire about it. He probably saw some interesting posts on the forum and couldn't help but delay for a while. Sword Demon said. With Brother Yu's dedication to his hobby, there was still a possibility of this happening. I'm really anxious. Lu Ku said, I'll go to the market later. Maybe I can receive it. This plan doesn't seem to be in a hurry, right? Sword Demon wondered. What do you mean? How long do you want me and Deepwater to not talk? Lu Ku stretched out her finger and poked at Sword Demon. I didn't mean that. Sword Demon said quickly. Let me do all these. To be honest, every detail of this plan, it's better for you or your friends around you not to participate at all. In case Water-Breaking Arrow or his colleagues or accomplices see it and know about it, it will more or less arouse his vigilance. Maybe all the previous efforts will be wasted. Shi Xiaotian said. That's right. Lu Ku nodded. She was also considered a celebrity in Forest Shade City. If she went to the market to collect the black memory box, which was a relatively special thing, there might be gossips. It was really not safe. What about you, little Tian? Lu Ku asked, do you have any other partners, or the like? Shi Xiaotian shook his head. You usually do things alone. Don't you need partners? Lu Ku said. Partners need to trust each other the most, but let two liars trust each other. Don't you think this is a bit too dangerous? Shi Xiaotian said. That depends on whether you think friendship or interest is more important. Sword Demon suddenly interjected. When there is friendship, there will be interest. When there is interest, there will suddenly be no friendship. The relationship between people is not so simple. Shi Xiaotian replied. Then doing so much alone, it's hard on you. Lu Ku glared at Sword Demon and changed the topic. No. If Brother Yu finds out where the monsters drop, then I'll have to trouble you to farm them. In addition, there is a part of the content that needs your presence. Shi Xiaotian smiled. Chapter 518. In the blink of an eye, another day had passed. Gu Fei immediately contacted Sword Demon and the others after he went online to show his attention to the progress of this matter. In the Maple Leaf Tavern, Gu Fei saw Sword Demon and Lu Ku. The two of them were slumped over the table. When Gu Fei came over to greet them, the two of them only raised their eyelids slightly. There were dark circles around their eyes, as if Luca had used grease to apply makeup. "Coming," Sword Demon said weakly. "You two are going to die." It was undeniable that Gu Fei's words were a bit direct, but looking at the two of them, he really couldn't think of any other possibilities. "I haven't slept all day. I just came back from the leveling area. I'm really going to die," Luca said. "What are you busy with?" Gu Fei asked. "What are you busy with?" "Farming things, boss. This kind of work should be done by mages." Luca used her remaining strength to shout at Gu Fei. "I can't. I'm very restrained in the game. I played too late last night." Gu Fei said innocently. Luca was so angry that she wanted to kick him. As for what the two of them were farming, there was no need to ask. "Did you get it?" Gu Fei knew the result. The two of them nodded heavily together. Last night, after asking around and seeking confirmation, Brother Yu finally returned to the game with definite news. As soon as he saw that Gu Fei wasn't there, he told the news to Sword Demon. The skill scroll of Black Memory Box was randomly dropped by level 50 humanoid monsters. Then everyone split up. Shi Xiaotian went to the market to see if he could buy it. Sword Demon, under Lu Ku's guidance, went to the level 50 leveling area of Forest Shade City. Shi Xiaotian, who went to the market, found nothing, and Sword Demon and Lu Ku had it even harder. Level 50 monsters were almost 10 levels higher. With Sword Demon's level, it was usually efficient to solo level 5 or so, but it was a bit difficult to surpass 10 levels. At this time, with the addition of Lu Ku, of course, it couldn't be considered a team, so they still had to work hard. Later, a few members of the elite squad heard the news and rushed over to help, treating it as leveling. With a few top experts working together to kill the small monsters, the situation naturally changed greatly. However, the broken environment of Shady Forest City really restricted one's performance. Otherwise, why would so many players migrate and leave behind a ground full of lurkers? Grinding through the night could be said to be barely getting by. What was even more tragic was that the sun had risen high in the sky, and the legendary Black Memory Box was still something that only existed in the memories. "I go offline when the sun rises. This is the lifestyle of the experts." However, Sword Demon, who was offline, rolled left and right and still couldn't fall asleep. This matter took up too much of his emotions. If he didn't solve it, he would always think about it. With that, he struggled to get up and get back into the game. It was also early morning in the game. Under the warm sunshine, Sword Demon saw Lu Ku looking at him with a tired smile. "I knew you'd come back," Lu Ku said. "You're the same." The Sword Demon smiled. In times of difficulty, he found that he always had a partner by his side. This feeling was always very happy. "Let's go." The two of them stepped back into the land where they were farming monsters. Without the help of the experts, the two of them returned to the state of being careful and strenuous. They kept grinding until the few of them went back online and rejoined the party. The sun was about to set, and even Gu Fei had entered the game. Finally, a small monster happily threw out a Black Memory Box scroll. The two of them felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders. At that moment, they wanted to lie on the ground. The other guys had enough sleep. After completing their mission, they immediately went to do their free activities. Sword Demon and Lu Ku were both unbearably tired. The walk to the tavern was like a dream. "Little Tin, give this to her when she comes." Lu Ku solemnly handed a magic scroll into Gu Fei's hands. "She's not here." Gu Fei opened his friend's list and glanced at it. Indeed, she wasn't there. "I'll leave it to you." With that said, the two of them struggled to get up from the bench. Lu Ku failed halfway and hurriedly called out to the Sword Demon, "Quick, help me up. I feel like my legs aren't mine anymore." "You're exaggerating," Gu Fei muttered. He saw the two of them supporting each other and walking out the door. "I really have to sleep. I'll come back when I wake up." Sword Demon patted Gu Fei as he walked past him. "When is that?" Gu Fei hurriedly asked. When these two guys woke up from their sleep, he wouldn't be online no matter what, right? If it was just 2 or 3 hours of sleep, he could reluctantly accept it. When they came online again, it would probably be time for the operation. Gu Fei didn't want to miss a good show. "But you haven't heard of the plan yet." Lu Ku seemed to remember something, but she quickly waved her hand. Ask little Tian when you give it to her. We'll leave first. The two of them left just like that. Gu Fei held the magic scroll and thought about a very important question. If Shi Xiaotian didn't come online, how long would he have to wait? This scroll really shouldn't have been handed over to him. Thinking of this, Gu Fei didn't chase after the two who were too tired to support themselves anymore. He turned to the mailbox and prepared to send it to Shi Xiaotian. Although he didn't want to miss a good show, compared to being an audience, it was more important not to delay official business. 6:00 in the morning. 3 figures appeared stealthily on a street in Shady City. This was the time of the day when the number of people in the game was relatively low. The overnight cats and the working gamers would cause a bit of a gap because they left early or were late. At this time, the street was quiet. The street, which was usually covered with muddy footprints, had been refreshed by the system. The 3 people walked from the east end of the street to the west end, and then from the west end to the east end. After watching for a while, one of them pointed to the roof on the side. One of them flashed and appeared on the roof, while the other gradually disappeared into the air. Teleportation, stealth. These 2 people were, of course, Gu Fei and Sword Demon. Last night, on the way to send the magic scroll to Shi Xiaotian, Gu Fei happened to catch this girl online. He immediately knew their plan and finally decided to follow their schedule. That night, Gu Fei didn't play anymore. He went offline early to rest. In exchange, he got up early, so he appeared on this secluded street at this time. Hey! Gu Fei, who was on the roof, poked his head out at this time. Are you sure he'll go from here? There won't be any accidents, right? I'm not sure. This is only the shortest way to the offline area. If he's not going to go offline immediately and has something else to do, of course, he won't go from here. The person who was still on the street answered Gu Fei and Lu Ku. Then he'll definitely come before 7? Gu Fei asked again. Hey, of course, we're not sure. That's why we came here early at 6:00 to wait. Lu Ku said. According to the normal habits of the overnight players, they usually went offline around 7 in the morning. Lu Ku and the others, just in case, started to make arrangements at 6:00 in advance. I hope he can come earlier. Gu Fei mumbled and retracted his head, lying on the roof to reduce the target. Call me when he comes. Gu Fei shouted. But Sword Demon, who had disappeared into the air, responded. Then you two wait here, I'll also go prepare. Lu Ku said and left the street. Lying flat was the greatest concealment that Gu Fei could do. Below, Sword Demon, after dealing with guys like Gu Fei, knew that stealth was not reliable at all. Seeing a large pile of sacks outside a door, he immediately flashed there, only occasionally sticking half of his head out to pay attention to the movement on the street. Shi Xiaotian's plan was far more complicated than they thought. It wasn't as simple as her getting the scroll and immediately using the studio's name to find Broken Water Arrow. Gu Fei originally thought that this part of the work had nothing to do with him. What he wanted to see was the scene where she got the video and then went to find Deepwater Arrow. This was a complete misunderstanding of priorities. How to design to get information from Broken Water Arrow was obviously the key point. Trust. The first thing to do was, of course, to deceive Broken Water Arrow's trust. Broken Water Arrow certainly couldn't rashly reveal his secret plan to a stranger who was wary of him. Therefore, he must first eliminate his wariness to have a chance. This was originally a very tricky problem, but it just happened that Sword Demon and Gu Fei's assassination of Broken Water Arrow provided an opportunity. At this time, Broken Water Arrow naturally understood that Sword Demon wasn't going to consider Deepwater Arrow's idea and was determined to kill him to the end. With the first time, of course, there would be a second time, and this second time would become a part of Shi Xiaotian's drama. This assassination by Gu Fei and Sword Demon was just a show. Shi Xiaotian would save Broken Water Arrow at the critical moment. Brilliant, too brilliant. In this way, getting close to Broken Water Arrow would be a matter of course. Shi Xiaotian's use of the opportunity turned Sword Demon's first assassination of Broken Water Arrow into the first part of the action, which attracted praise from Yutian Shenming and unscathed in battle. These two guys, seeing that it was a beauty, had already lost their stance. It's not that simple. Shi Xiaotian said, after all, I will talk to him about business later, and he will immediately understand that I didn't save him by chance. It's just that since he has already received my kindness, his heart will always become a little softer, so there will be a chance to knock down his guard. There are still a lot of things to do, but let me do them. You just have to act this play well. To act such a play together, there was a slight lack of manpower, so Yutian Shenming and Unscathed in Battle were also pulled in as able-bodied men. They would play the role of a savior together with Shi Xiaotian. After all, the strength of Gu Fei and Sword Demon, who played the role of assassins, was obvious to all. It was too much for a random character to defeat these two people. In the meantime, everyone also considered that with Gu Fei's strength, with two more helpers, would the defeat be too fake? In the end, it was Gu Fei who patted his chest and guaranteed that he would definitely lose flawlessly. This was actually a skill, and Gu Fei was no stranger to it. Usually, when he sparred with others, especially with the elders, he would often use this skill. The worst was, of course, to give way to the opponent, which was more painful than directly defeating the opponent. A little more advanced was to make it so that both sides knew, but the audience did not. In the eyes of the audience, it was a tie, but the people in the game had a clear idea of the outcome, and Gu Fei had reached the highest level of attainment. He could even deceive his opponent, making them feel complacent about their victory, completely unaware that Gu Fei was secretly giving way. Chapter 5:19. The streets were quiet. Occasionally, players would walk by, but as long as they didn't wear a hat or mask and walked arrogantly, they definitely weren't people from Extreme Frost. In Extreme Frost, other than some of Lu Ku's female troops who didn't want to wear that disguise, everyone else in Extreme Frost had already put on makeup. Although they were having fun in the forest, they were too embarrassed to show off their disguises in front of the public. So once they left the forest, everyone wore a hat and covered their faces and walked on the narrow path, looking very sneaky. 6:30 p.m. sharp. Half an hour had passed since the ambush. Finally, the sneaky figure that Gu Fei and the others were waiting for appeared on the other side of the street. After Sword Demon aimed, he immediately shouted in the team channel, "The target has appeared, but the situation has changed." "What's the situation?" everyone asked. "He's not alone," Sword Demon said. On the roof, Gu Fei carefully peeked his head out and could only see half of the street and half of the body. One of them was undoubtedly Breaking Water Arrow, but there were several other players around him. It must be that bastard Water Depth who called for some people to protect him. Lu Ku gritted her teeth. "It's actually nothing, it's nothing," Gu Fei said. "How can we do that?" Sword Demon quickly said. Of course, he understood Gu Fei's intentions. However, everyone had done so much for the sake of protecting Deepwater and his fellow guild members. Sword Demon couldn't do something like sacrificing a portion of his people so casually. "You guys decide, let me know when you're done." Gu Fei took out his sword and placed it beside him. He decided to be a hired thug. This matter involved both the guild and his brothers. It was too complicated. He didn't have feelings for these people like Sword Demon and Lu Ku, so it was better not to express his opinion. "Little Tian, what do you think?" Lu Ku asked the chief planner of this operation, Shi Xiaotian. "You guys decide." Shi Xiaotian also stayed out of it. So only Sword Demon and Lu Ku were left in a dilemma as they got closer and closer to the target. "Do it." Lu Ku suddenly gritted her teeth and sent a message. The Sword Demon was taken aback. His idea was to give up first, but he didn't expect Lu Ku to have a tacit understanding with him this time. "This group of idiots, it's good to teach them a lesson," Lu Ku said. But Sword Demon still wanted to say something, but he didn't expect Gu Fei to stand up from the roof and jump down. "Sword Demon, you don't have to do it. I'll do it." When Gu Fei sent this message, the people on the street had already noticed him and were in an uproar. But at this time, how could Sword Demon choose to avoid? Without saying anything else, he walked out from behind the sack and stood quietly beside Gu Fei. "Look for him. The others can leave if they have nothing else to do." Gu Fei pointed at the Breaking Water Arrow. It was a habit of Gu Fei to give necessary reminders. No one flinched. Instead, everyone came forward. Gu Fei turned his head to the sword demon and said, "You see, I gave them a choice. They chose this path of death, so don't be so burdened." The sword demon smiled bitterly. What kind of choice was this? How could someone just hear such a sentence and leave as if nothing had happened? You're the one who's going to die, right? The president expected you guys to come again. A person on the other side sneered. He expected it? Then why did he call you guys over? You guys don't usually have a good relationship with him, right? Gu Fei wiped the sword with the corner of his clothes. There was some dirt on it when it was placed on the roof. Compared to the mage robe that he didn't like, Gu Fei cared more about whether this weapon was shiny enough. Cut the crap! The other side shouted and led a few brothers to rush up. From the configuration of these people's professions, it could be seen that this team did indeed have a plan. Warriors, thieves, archers, mages, priests, and knights. Apart from the Grandmaster of Combat, these 6 major professions were indispensable to a mature team. These professions were present in the team in front of them. This was not an easy thing to do in Forest Shade City. The popular team here was a bunch of lurkers, and then the other professions existed like embellishments. Don't hesitate. After Gu Fei slapped the sword demon, he immediately set an example. Facing the other side's turbulent impact, he flashed forward and floated directly behind them with a teleportation. When the other side was still in a daze, he turned around and used a fierce double flame flash. The 3 of them were turned into flying ash on the spot. He really doesn't show any mercy. The sword demon felt a little shocked. Although he had fought side by side with Gu Fei many times, at least every time he was a real enemy. This time was somewhat different, but Gu Fei's resolute attitude was no different. Raising his hand and killing 3 people in a second, Gu Fei's murderous aura was too strong. Those guys couldn't help but be shocked. The previous momentum had disappeared after Gu Fei's slash of 3 people. In Shi Xiaoyan's words, the heart had already begun to soften and hesitate. However, they had spoken too confidently in the beginning. How could they easily give up now? They had to bite the bullet and go forward. Otherwise, there wouldn't be such an idiom as riding a tiger and finding it hard to get off. Unexpectedly, Gu Fei didn't use the momentum of this slash to suppress them. Instead, he turned his head to look at Broken Arrow. "Comrade Broken Arrow, they are no match for you. Don't bother them with personal grievances. Let them go quickly." "That's right." Broken Arrow actually nodded and said to the players in a deep voice, "Everyone go first. I have something to say to this brother. Old Broken Arrow." Everyone obviously understood the meaning behind this, but none of them moved. People are always strange. When others think that you should die with them, no one is willing. But when others want you to abandon them and live alone, everyone is generous and heroic. This is my own business. It has nothing to do with you guys. You guys go first. Broken Arrow said. "Impossible. If we leave together. If we die together." Everyone shouted. All right. Gu Fei couldn't take it anymore. "It's completely different from what I imagined. You guys should just die together." Actually, there was a reason why Gu Fei was so ruthless. One move to suppress the opponent and let them see how scary he was. Then, he would use words to force Broken Arrow out. This guy was currently busy trying to win people's hearts. At this time, Gu Fei predicted that he would be very heroic and fight him alone, telling the others to quickly leave. However, Gu Fei had guessed this beginning correctly. He didn't expect this ending. These guys actually became heroic in this situation. No one was willing to leave. What's worse was that the dialogue was so old-fashioned. People's hearts were really hard to guess. Gu Fei couldn't help but sigh. He set off layers of fire waves, his hands flying. Gu Fei knew that even though the sword demon stepped forward, he was still conflicted. So, he didn't want to embarrass him and took the initiative to get rid of everyone. Why bother? With the last sigh, a group of people was completely annihilated. No one could even touch the hem of Gu Fei's clothes before they returned to the respawn point. Gu Fei's long sword hung at his side. He looked at Broken Arrow. "Good skills." Broken Arrow nodded. Gu Fei raised his eyebrows. It's nothing. I'm different from them. Broken Arrow began to roll up his sleeves. If you're different, I'll help you evaluate it. Don't worry, I'll be very careful. Gu Fei raised his sword. You should know that you were only able to hit me yesterday because you were lucky. Broken Arrow said. If you didn't mention it, I would have forgotten. Turns out I already hit you yesterday. Gu Fei scratched his head. Then you're lucky. I'm always very good at hitting people I've already hit before. Broken Arrow sneered and suddenly attacked. With a flip of his palm, a cold light flashed. A strong wind had already reached Gu Fei's face. Gu Fei hurriedly turned his head to dodge. He only felt a chill on his cheek. He reached out and touched it. There was already a blood stain. Looking at Broken Arrow again, he was also surprised that Gu Fei was able to dodge this attack. What he was holding in his hand wasn't the exaggerated and exquisite longbow that Yu Tianxinming and the others often used, but a short crossbow. Moreover, looking at his posture with his right hand flat and his left hand dragging below, it didn't look like he was shooting an arrow. It was more like he was shooting a gun. Gu Fei suddenly realized that if this guy was really like the rumors said and was a retired soldier, then military knowledge and close combat weren't all his advantages. Shooting. Perhaps this was his strongest point. With regards to this technique, how could ordinary people like Yu Tianxinming and the others who had never touched a gun be on the same level? Just as he was thinking, he saw Broken Arrow's index finger move again. It was obvious that he was going to pull the trigger. Gu Fei hurriedly used his footwork to turn to the side. A cold light had already shot past where he was standing. Good eyesight, good reaction. Water-breaking Arrow said without batting an eyelid. The 4 fingers of his left hand, which were originally under his right hand, turned up slightly, which happened to cover the movement of his right index finger. Gu Fei could no longer judge his shot from the movement of his index finger. The best way to knock down an opponent is to use a pistol. This old saying from his dad sounded in Gu Fei's ears. Of course, with Gu Fei's current martial arts attainment, he knew that his dad was only using an analogy. What he meant was that modern technological weapons had greater speed and lethality than Kung Fu. It wasn't specifically saying that pistols were better than Kung Fu. But this saying was also a bit suitable for Broken Arrow. The shooting speed of the crossbow in his hand was far faster than the bows of Yu Tianxinming and the others. What was worse was that the range of movement was too small. At this time, when he blocked with his left hand, his right index finger didn't even have any range of movement. With such concealment, even Gu Fei felt that it was very troublesome. This kind of feeling was a bit like meeting an opponent with a gun in reality. But in reality, even with a gun, there was still a need to talk about the shooting level. If an ordinary person held a gun, it was hard to say whether they could hit a target 10 meters away. But if Broken Arrow was a soldier, then he would be proficient in this area. Now that he was in the game, with a large amount of assistance from the system, it was even more difficult to deal with him than in reality. But facing this kind of predicament, Gu Fei actually showed a happy smile. It was still possible to meet an opponent with Kung Fu in reality through visiting, but this kind of opponent was really rare. It was really great to be able to play this game. Chapter 520. What's going on? What's going on? Let me have a look. There were 2 people standing on a roof a few streets away from this street. One was a priest, and the other was a knight. They were young Master Han and Brother Yu. At that moment, Brother Yu had an anxious look on his face as he kept shouting. The young master of the Han family heard the urging and passed the binoculars in his hand to him thoughtfully. What kind of person is drinking so early in the morning? When Brother Yu took the telescope, he saw Han family young master's right hand was shaking a wine glass. This was just a pub where he drank. Han family young master took the glass and went straight to the rooftop. It was 6 o'clock in the morning. Most of the people who came to the pub were just taking a break. It was rare to see someone drinking. Someone who likes drinking. Han family young master answered casually and drank the wine in one gulp. Are you not going to return this thing? Brother Yu raised the telescope in front of his eyes and asked. I've almost forgotten who its owner is. The Han family young master said. Tsk tisk. Brother Yu adjusted the angle and asked, "Where is he?" Han family young master raised his hand and twisted his head. Brother Yu said, "Oh," and then asked in surprise, "Where is he? Didn't you say there were many people?" "That was just now. They are all dead now," Han family young master said. "Qianli? He is getting stronger and stronger." Brother Yu was a little scared. It had only been 2 minutes since Han family young master saw them meet. You should have known that when dealing with these ordinary characters, he has never been serious at all. He often says that it's as easy as lifting a finger. It's not arrogance, nor is it a joke. It's a very sincere statement of fact. The young master of the Han family said. "That guy is water-breaking arrow?" Brother Yu asked. "What kind of posture is he in?" Brother Yu was puzzled. Suddenly, there was another shout, "He's moving!" The moment he finished shouting, the binoculars had already disappeared from his hands. The Han family young master had snatched them away to look at them. "Big brother!" Brother Yu wanted to cry, but no tears came out. When he was free, he would take a few glances at him, but when there was an exciting plot, he would immediately take it back. Brother Yu felt that he was so shabby. As a dark knight, it was not difficult for him to spar with a light priest, but the problem was that he did not dare. Although this person was a priest of the light, his heart was very scary and dark. On the street that the two of them were paying attention to, there was indeed a commotion. But what was surprising was that the first to move was not Gu Fei, nor was it water-breaking arrow, but Sword Demon. Gu Fei and water-breaking arrow both focused their attention on each other. The situation in front of them was created by the two of them as if they were fighting one-on-one. Sword Demon was determined to make his presence known. He suddenly used his ultimate move, Fog Shadow Ambush, and rushed towards Water-Breaking Arrow. But Water-Breaking Arrow was still calm about this ambush. At the moment when Sword Demon moved, he had already made his move, quickly stepping to the left. Gu Fei sighed. Sword Demon's Fog Shadow Ambush had a sprinting distance. This was the source of its impact and destructive power, but it was also one of his flaws. Think about this sprinting distance. It was not teleportation. No matter how fast the movement was, it would not be faster than a stab from a face-to-face. The first time Gu Fei encountered this move, the super fast movement and the 2-second disappearance were indeed a little hard to guard against. However, after this experience, people like Gu Fei were more wary of this move. For people like Gu Fei, it was not as scary as it was the first time. This depended on how Sword Demon adjusted, how to predict, and how to make good use of the 2-second disappearance. And these were all experience, skills, qualities that Gu Fei had accumulated through 20 years of systematic learning. For Sword Demon, who was just playing the mouse and keyboard over and over again, even if he had played for 20 years, Gu Fei would not feel that there was much difference between him and the auntie selling onions on the street. Just by looking at Water-Breaking Arrow's actions, Gu Fei knew that this move of Sword Demon's was not optimistic. At first glance, Water-Breaking Arrow seemed to only pay attention to Gu Fei, but in fact, he did not miss Sword Demon's actions at all. At this time, Gu Fei even found that the position he chose at the beginning seemed to be to guard against Sword Demon's attack. At this time, when Sword Demon moved, he also moved, accurately and timely. In the stage of Sword Demon sprinting, he took 2 steps and simply hid behind the pile of sacks on the side of the street. Sword Demon hid behind the pile of sacks to ambush, and now Water-Breaking Arrow also used this method to delay Sword Demon's attack. At this time, there was no target in Sword Demon's eyes. If he continued to take the shortest route between 2 points, he would only hit the sacks, so he had to walk in an arc or a zigzag line. The movement distance had been forcibly extended, and Water-Breaking Arrow had more time to make the next step. It was more likely that because Sword Demon ran too far, when he reached Water-Breaking Arrow's side, the skill had already ended, which would be even more tragic. However, this kind of relatively low-level mistake would not appear on Sword Demon, who had a perfect grasp of the game skills. Seeing that he was still sprinting, Gu Fei believed that the skill time was enough. Disappear, rush out of the corner and attack from his side. This was the thought in Sword Demon's mind, but he did not expect that just as he was about to make the step, the pile of sacks suddenly rolled down one by one. Fuck! Gu Fei couldn't help but shout. He didn't expect water-breaking arrow to do this. Gu Fei specialized in all kinds of changes and techniques in fighting, and water-breaking arrow simply used the surrounding environment and props. This was something that Gu Fei really didn't expect. The sword ghost obviously didn't expect this either. The burlap sack that suddenly collapsed almost crushed him. He hurriedly dodged to the side, wasting time and movement. When he wanted to turn back, he saw the burlap sack all over the ground and the water-breaking arrow leaning against the wall, still trying to pull away from him. Sword Demon regretfully cancelled the skill. He knew that the skill time was not enough to reach water-breaking arrow. Quickly dodge! Gu Fei hurriedly shouted. He didn't expect Sword Demon to not even move after cancelling the skill. Before he finished speaking, the crossbow in water-breaking arrow's hand flashed with a cold light. In the process of doing these actions, his right hand holding the crossbow was always stable. The moment Sword Demon stopped, he had already made an attack. Sword Demon's dodging was just moving as fast as he could. Of course, he couldn't dodge this attack. He turned around and retreated to Gu Fei's side with a short arrow stuck in his forehead. Gu Fei let out a long breath. He was used to creating instant kills and seeing instant kills. After being hit by water-breaking arrow, he was immediately finished. At this moment, it seemed that his attack wasn't as sharp as it used to be. Hide to the side. Gu Fei pushed Sword Demon to the side behind the pile of sacks. Sword Demon only felt very depressed, but he knew that he couldn't help much. He was the #1 expert in the game in the past, but now he found that there was a confrontation in the realm of experts that he couldn't get involved in. How painful was this? After the painful Sword Demon shrank back into the pile of sacks, he even forgot to pull out the arrow in his forehead. Water-breaking arrow still stood in the same place. He didn't seem to have any intention of killing Sword Demon. His crossbow was pointed at Gu Fei again, and his left hand covered his right index finger again. Hey! At this time, Lu Ku's voice appeared in the team chat. Do you need help? Lu Ku was a thief and knew stealth. She was actually standing on the street, but she was watching from a relatively far place. Everyone's original plan was to help water-breaking arrow, but now it was the other way around. It really hurt their pride. Sword Demon's pride was indeed fiercely crushed, but Gu Fei was still calm. Do you think he needs help right now? Not him, I'm talking about you guys, boss. Lu Ku said. Don't mess around, let him focus on dealing. Sword Demon quickly said. The water-breaking arrow was still pointed at Gu Fei, and this guy was still chatting with Lu Ku. Come on, come on. Lu Ku shouted twice with a pale face. Shoot, why don't you shoot? Gu Fei at this time spread out his hands and asked water-breaking arrow. What about teleportation? Why don't you teleport? Water-breaking arrow asked Gu Fei. He didn't spread out his hands, and the crossbow was firmly aimed at Gu Fei. You guess. Gu Fei said. After using it for such a long time, the current limit of teleportation with increased proficiency was only 6 meters, but water-breaking arrow was now 10 meters away from him. It wasn't that Gu Fei didn't want to use it, but even if he used it, he wouldn't be able to completely close in. But it seemed like water-breaking arrow also knew that this was Gu Fei's biggest trump card, and was carefully guarding against it. Naturally, he couldn't let him see through his thoughts. The answer, you guess, obviously provoked the water-breaking arrow for a moment. The teleportation skill didn't circulate, and this type of high-level skills information was as strict as always. This skill's movement distance, cooldown time, water-breaking arrow didn't know anything, so he really didn't know the reason why Gu Fei didn't use it on him. Speaking of which, if you don't shoot, is it because you don't have any bullets? Gu Fei suddenly said. You guess. Water-breaking arrow gave a tooth for a tooth, but in his heart, he was shocked. Because Gu Fei indeed said what was on his mind. The structure of his 6-mechanism repeating crossbow was the same as a revolver, a rotating arrow box that could hold 6 short arrows. Every time the trigger was pulled, a short arrow would automatically be ejected from the box and hung on the string. And this crossbow had a total of 6 strings, and each string could shoot an arrow, just enough to be used 6 times. and after 6 times, the string had to be reattached, and the arrow box had to be taken out to reload the arrow. The operation was much more troublesome than ordinary archers. At this time, he had already used 3 arrows. Water-breaking arrow didn't think that Gu Fei would be so difficult to deal with. Just now, at that kind of distance, he couldn't accurately hit the target with 2 arrows. Speaking of which, the attack of his equipment wasn't very high. Fortunately, the opponent was only a mage, and with the use of skills, it should be enough to kill him. Snipe. After this skill was used, the arrow speed and damage would be greatly increased. Water-breaking arrow at this time was a bit regretful that he was a bit careless. The first arrow Gu Fei just barely dodged. If he had used snipe at that time, it was very likely that he would have hit the target. And after that, he still didn't use the next 2 arrows, and deliberately set up a trap. He understood that Gu Fei was an expert, and after experiencing it once, he had already adapted to this kind of speed. He wanted to let Gu Fei get more used to it, and then suddenly increase the speed of the last 3 arrows into a killing move. Chapter 521. The street seemed to return to peace in an instant. Sword Demon shrank behind the sack, feeling quite aggrieved. He was an expert, but now he was reduced to such a state. No one would feel good. He really wanted to poke his head out to see the situation, but he didn't dare. It wasn't that he was afraid of death, but he was afraid of causing trouble for Gu Fei. He knew that he had become a burden in this battle. When he thought of this, he even had the thought of deleting his account. On the street, Gu Fei and Broken Water Arrow didn't move, both staring at each other. The difference was that Broken Water Arrow was aiming at Gu Fei's mouth. He was only afraid of Gu Fei's teleportation move, and he was also guarding against this move. Fortunately, no matter how much he chanted, his lips would always move. And Gu Fei was staring at Broken Water Arrow's hand. He was glad that this was a game, and all kinds of attacks and skills had some beautiful effects. For example, if he shot an arrow from a crossbow, there would definitely be a clear flash of cold light, just like the fire of a real gun. Although it would be a little slower than the movement of a finger, it was still real. If he relied on the movement of his fingers to dodge, if he met a sinister and vicious opponent, his fingers would shake like they were cramping. Even Gu Fei couldn't stand it. Lu Ku, who was watching the battle stealthily from afar, was also very nervous. She held her breath, waiting for the 2 to start attacking each other. But in the end, she held her breath and didn't see anyone make a move. Finally, she couldn't help but send a message. "How long are you 2 going to stare at each other?" Gu Fei sighed in his heart and said, "Looks like you." Just as he said these 3 words, he saw Broken Water Arrow take a big stride forward. Gu Fei was startled and quickly dodged as well. As a result, the 2 of them saw that the other party was not doing what they expected, and hurriedly steadied themselves. Gu Fei smiled bitterly. He had experienced this situation before. Back then, when he was dueling with Feng Xing, the one who could move unhindered across the 4 seas, that guy had been staring at his mouth. Just as he was about to speak, Feng Xing had anxiously tried to dodge Gu Fei's teleportation. This time, the water-breaking arrow had obviously made the same mistake. However, Gu Fei had also been so focused that he had forgotten himself, and had also started to move. The 2 masters instantly realized what was going on and were a little embarrassed. Lu Ku, who was watching the battle, sent a congratulatory message. "What are you 2 doing? Are you cramping?" "Don't worry, I'm not chanting," Gu Fei said. Water-breaking arrow suddenly felt that he had fallen into a disadvantageous position. His opponent could fake just by moving his mouth. How confusing was that? Now that he suddenly spoke, could it be that he wanted to suddenly mix in a chant in his words to catch him off guard? Breaking Arrow thought like this and slowly took 2 steps back. He didn't know the maximum distance of instant movement, but he knew that this kind of skill couldn't be infinite. Retreating a bit more was always safe. Although the further the distance, the lower his chances of hitting the target, the overall benefit was still him. "Looks like you're going to compete in patience with me." This was what Gu Fei wanted to say the first time he opened his mouth. Now that he saw the water-breaking arrow's retreat, He was even more certain of his conjecture. The water-breaking arrow wanted to see Gu Fei's movements clearly before striking. Water-breaking arrow was silent and focused on Gu Fei. At this time, Gu Fei's words seemed to be a trap to him. Maybe he would say something and then instant movement would come out. If we're comparing patience, you win. Gu Fei continued. I don't have time, I have to go to work in a bit. Gu Fei looked at the time. Water-breaking arrow continued to be silent. Okay, I'm coming. After Gu Fei suddenly said this, he raised his sword. There was no chanting, no curved movement. Gu Fei walked in a straight line, the shortest line between 2 points. Water-breaking arrow didn't think that Gu Fei would be so bold and direct. He didn't put his gun in his eyes at all. In this situation, why would water-breaking arrow hesitate? Shooting was his only choice. A cold light flashed. The sniper shot was released. It was faster, fiercer, and more powerful than the previous 3 arrows. You can dodge this? Water-breaking arrow didn't believe that Gu Fei's reaction speed could reach this level. Gu Fei indeed did not react. He himself was like an arrow that was shot out, charging straight towards the breaking water arrow. Water-breaking arrow's sniper shot hit right between his eyebrows. His marksmanship was impressive. It was a pity that this was not a real gun, so it was impossible for this shot to explode his head. Gu Fei waved his arm, and the arrow was wiped away like a drop of sweat. A stream of blood flowed down from his forehead, but it did not stop Gu Fei's advance in the slightest. Too reckless. Water-breaking arrow and Lu Ku, who was watching the fight, all had the same thought. Because from Gu Fei's actions, this guy didn't seem to want to dodge this arrow. He was ready to face it head-on. Wasn't this guy afraid of being killed in a second? Although a godly archer could kill a mage in a second with a sniper shot, water-breaking arrow was undoubtedly a godly archer. Facing this kind of opponent, he should have this kind of vigilance. It was useless to think about this now. Water-breaking arrow quickly turned around and left. He didn't want to fight with Gu Fei in close combat, and he didn't want to waste the remaining 2 arrows. He hoped to stall until the cooldown of his sniper shot was over before shooting the second arrow. Gu Fei didn't dodge the first arrow already made him confident. If Gu Fei could dodge, of course he wouldn't do it head-on. This showed that he couldn't dodge a shot with this speed. However, Gu Fei took the arrow head-on and rushed forward a few steps. He had already closed the distance to use teleportation. Of course, he wouldn't be stupid enough to play chase with a godly archer who had an advantage in agility. This was an opportunity that he had worked hard to get close. Teleportation. While water-breaking arrow was preparing to run away, he still saw Gu Fei's lips slightly moving. He guessed that he was going to use teleportation to get close. He already had a plan on how to defend against this move, so he immediately rolled on the ground. No matter how Gu Fei moved, he could only occupy a position next to water-breaking arrow. Water-breaking arrow didn't believe that he would be so unlucky to roll to Gu Fei's feet. As he rolled, he glanced at the side of his eyes. Sure enough, he wasn't so unlucky. With this roll, Gu Fei, who suddenly appeared next to him, was thrown to the side. Without waiting for him to completely stand up, water-breaking arrow raised his arm and pointed the muzzle at Gu Fei. You didn't dodge the first arrow. Do you dare to take this arrow head-on? Taking advantage of the opportunity to dodge, he calmly opened up a position. During the cooldown of teleportation, he could run while changing the arrow box. This was the reason why water-breaking arrow wanted to gain the upper hand. To put it bluntly, he didn't have the confidence to kill Gu Fei with 3 arrows. He didn't expect that his reaction was fast, but Gu Fei's reaction wasn't slow either. When he used teleportation, he had already clearly seen water-breaking arrow's rolling action. At this time, he immediately turned his leg and swept it right at water-breaking arrow's hand. Water-breaking arrow's hand tilted. With a whoosh sound, this arrow missed and brushed past Gu Fei's side. Water-breaking arrow was shocked. He saw Gu Fei's leg sweep, and the sword in his right hand had already followed and slashed. Water-breaking arrow really wasn't an ordinary character. Facing a professional fighter's attack, he didn't panic at all. He shrank his body and narrowly dodged it. Then he stretched out his left hand and even chased after Gu Fei's wrist to grab it. This was naturally bullying Gu Fei's absolute weakness. With direct physical contact, people like unscathed in battle could forcibly twist Gu Fei's head and put it on the muzzle. So although he knew that this move wouldn't cause any damage, when he thought of the serious consequences that could develop into a wrestling, Gu Fei had to dodge. For him, this was even more terrifying than a move that could cause damage. Retracting his hand to dodge Water-Breaking Arrow's grab, Water-Breaking Arrow's right hand that was holding the crossbow pointed at him again. Gu Fei quickly waved his left hand and slapped Water-Breaking Arrow's aim askew. This time, Water-Breaking Arrow obviously learned his lesson. He didn't shoot in a hurry and kept this precious last arrow. But at this time, Gu Fei's cooldown of teleportation was recovering minute by minute. Water-Breaking Arrow's situation was obviously quite unfavorable. After a few rounds of punching and kicking, he still didn't have the chance to aim the crossbow at Gu Fei. He was also very surprised by Gu Fei's accuracy and agility. Fight! At this point, Water-Breaking Arrow could only make a last-ditch effort. When Gu Fei's sword slashed towards him, he didn't wave his hand to grab Gu Fei's wrist like before to force back Gu Fei's attack. Instead, he ignored this sword. At the same time, both of his hands held the crossbow tightly and steadily raised it towards Gu Fei. Let's see if your sword is faster or my gun is faster. Worst comes to worst, we'll both die. Water-Breaking Arrow's sniping cooldown was now over. He believed that there was no reason for a mage to take 2 sniping shots. And this time, it was already too late for Gu Fei to stop his attack. This was the result of him ignoring Gu Fei's attack. He knew very well what it meant to be hit by Gu Fei's sword to kill a mage. But an archer's attack setting was different from a mage's. As long as the arrow was released, even if the attacker died, the damage would still exist. But a mage's magic was non-physical. The setting was that if the mage died, the magic wouldn't have any damage. So in the current situation, as long as Water-Breaking Arrow could release this arrow, even if he couldn't dodge Gu Fei's attack in time, both sides would die together. But if this arrow could kill Gu Fei first, even if Gu Fei's remaining flames burned him, there wouldn't be any danger. No matter what, he wouldn't be at a disadvantage. Water-Breaking Arrow used all his strength to pull the trigger, but he felt a trace of abnormality. The arrow didn't shoot as he expected. Because after pulling the trigger only shook slightly. It didn't have the pleasure of pulling the trigger to the end. Hey, things like guns will always have some mechanical problems from time to time. So the sword in hand is the most reliable. Double flame flash. Gu Fei saw that it was impossible for the Water-Breaking Arrow to dodge this sword, so he immediately chanted this killer move. This was the last bit of energy that he could release with his magic power. Water-Breaking Arrow couldn't dodge at all. His last sight was on the crossbow in his hand. He suddenly saw a small ball of paper stuck behind the trigger. Could it be that time? Water-Breaking Arrow's mind flashed. During the second round of close combat, Gu Fei's left hand had slapped away an attack that was aimed at him. Presumably, at the moment of contact, this small ball of paper was accurately stuck. Too scary. Water-Breaking Arrow murmured in his heart. A precise attack that he couldn't even detect. Could he still be considered a human? Chapter 522. Water-Breaking Arrow had no room to maneuver. This was him sending himself to a path of no return. If he couldn't kill his opponent, he could only be killed by his opponent. Or, from the beginning, when he stuck the paper ball on my trigger, he was waiting for me to take this step. This guy was not only frightening, but also very scheming. After Water-Breaking Arrow's mind flashed with this thought, the sword edge had already swept past his body. The pain didn't seem to be very strong, and more importantly, there was no burning sensation like when he was bombarded by a mage's fire spell. Water-Breaking Arrow fixed his eyes on Gu Fei's sword. The flames of the dual flame flash had disappeared at some point. In other words, this sword was only a mage's slash, and there was no spell damage at all. At this time, Gu Fei also dashed to the eaves with his back against the wall. Water-Breaking Arrow was no longer in his eyes, and he looked in another direction, fully alert. Someone saved me. Water-Breaking Arrow understood that someone had ambushed Gu Fei without delay. It was easy to stop a mage's attack. As long as there was a slight hit, the spell would be interrupted. No matter how strong Gu Fei's skill was, he couldn't escape this system's rules. His dual flame flash was obviously interrupted, so this attack became a normal slash. However, there was no one on the street. The person who could make this attack was obviously a long-range profession. Was it an archer in the guild? Water-breaking Arrow was guessing when he heard an extremely fierce arrow whistling. Water-breaking Arrow couldn't help but frown. He hated the design of the arrow in the game to be so arrogant. It was simply a hint to the enemy. However, although he didn't like it, he also understood that in the game, a loud sound was also a symbol of extremely strong attack. Under the eaves, Gu Fei nimbly turned around, and the arrow nailed straight into the wall. Most of the houses in Forest Shade City were made of wood. This arrow shot directly through the wall, and the arrow was fully inserted halfway. What a strong arrow! Water-breaking Arrow exclaimed. As a godly archer, it was also the first time he saw such a fierce arrow attack. At the same time, just like Gu Fei, he had also sensed the origin of this arrow. At the top of the wall near the end of the street, an archer was half-squatting by the eaves, posing in a flashy pose. It was obvious that he was very skilled in this art. The previous shot was a sniper shot, followed by a double arrow. Gu Fei rolled on the ground, and the two arrows fell to the ground. Gu Fei looked left and right, as if he was weighing whether he should continue to deal with the water-breaking arrow or deal with this uninvited guest. But just as he turned around, his expression suddenly changed, and he leaped behind a pile of sacks on the side of the street. Another arrow flashed with a red glow and whistled through the air. Gu Fei had already dodged it, but he didn't expect the arrow to suddenly change direction and chase after Gu Fei, rushing behind the pile of sacks. White light. Water-breaking Arrow clearly saw a flash of white light behind the pile of sacks. He was startled and hurried over, but Gu Fei's figure was already nowhere to be seen. Dead. Water-breaking Arrow was startled, but he didn't feel surprised, because he knew that Gu Fei had been hit by his sniper shot, so of course his HP wasn't full. He had just used teleportation, so it must still be on cooldown. More importantly, the arrow actually had a tracking effect, which was very unexpected. Water-breaking Arrow was sure that it wasn't a tracking arrow. Tracking arrows were extremely slow, even slower than a mage's fireball. But the arrow just now had the quality of a sniper shot, and it even had an automatic tracking effect. How could he dodge it? Water-breaking Arrow thought about the strange red light on the arrow just now. Water-breaking Arrow guessed that this was another new skill. Thinking about it, he looked back and saw another archer standing in the wind far behind him. Looking at the figure, it was obviously a female. Gu Fei was dead, so Sword Demon quickly sneaked out from behind the pile of sacks. He wanted to retreat quietly, but he heard a roar. A warrior flew down from the roof, and his feet landed on the ground, making everyone's heart tremble. Then he waved his arm, and a furious whirlwind was released wildly on the street. It wandered around, obviously aiming at Sword Demon who was in stealth. Stealth was slow, and this whirlwind was aimed at the previous hiding place of Sword Demon. So although he didn't know the specific location of Sword Demon, it blocked all the angles he wanted to retreat. Sword Demon's figure quickly appeared in the air. It was unrealistic to escape with the speed of stealth. Sword Demon looked left and right, then stepped onto the pile of sacks on the side. With a leap, half of his body was already on the roof. The archer on the opposite roof immediately shot an arrow, hitting him in the shoulder. Sword Demon's figure trembled, but he gritted his teeth and didn't let go. He quickly turned over and used swift movement, flying away from the roof. Motherfucker! Breaking Water Arrow heard the warrior cursing, then grabbed a sack and threw it onto the roof of the house. Water-breaking Arrow was a little confused. He looked left, looked right, and looked at the roof. All three of them were undoubtedly masters. The destructive power of the archer on the roof, the strange skills of the female archer behind him, and the warrior's awareness of using whirlwind to block the way of retreat were all wonderful. Such a character shouldn't have appeared in Shady Grove City. In this place, the most skilled were the lurkers, followed by the thieves. Other professions were rarely seen in glory. Who are you? Water-breaking Arrow asked. In the blink of an eye, he saw that the archer on the roof had already retreated. The warrior on the street had also sheathed his 2 swords and stood there majestically without moving. Only the female archer behind him, at this time, strode towards him. Water-breaking arrow. The woman called out his name clearly. You know me. Water-breaking arrow was surprised and looked back. At this time, there was no you anymore. The warrior had turned around and was ready to leave, leaving only the woman to talk to him. We've noticed you for a long time. The woman said. You are. Water-breaking arrow was puzzled. Lone Eagle Studio. The woman introduced herself. Studio? Water-breaking arrow continued to be puzzled. It's newly established. Currently, it's still in the stage of recruiting. We don't have much fame yet. You said you're looking for me? What do you want? Water-breaking arrow could certainly understand the woman's intention. Do we continue to stand here and talk, or find a place to show our faces? One of them had his face covered, and the other had his face painted. Both of them could be considered to have hidden themselves. It doesn't matter. Water-breaking arrow said, I'm very grateful that you saved me just now, but I'm not interested in joining the studio. You don't have to refuse so quickly, right? Let's find a place to talk. The woman invited. After all, it was someone who had just helped them a lot. Almost no one dared to refuse such an invitation. Water-breaking arrow was no exception. After nodding, the two left the street together. Where to? Water-breaking arrow asked. Anywhere. The woman replied. Then let's go here. Water-breaking arrow pointed to the side. It was a tavern, the best place for players to chat in the game. Shi Xiaotian was slightly surprised. She initially thought that water-breaking arrow wouldn't be willing to talk about this kind of thing in a place where people gathered. But now, he actually took the initiative to choose such a tavern. From the beginning, it was not in line with her expectations. Things didn't seem to be going as smoothly as expected. Shi Xiaotian hoped to dig out something from the woman's expression. She failed. The woman's face was too abstract. She felt dizzy looking at it for too long. Then let's go here. Shi Xiaotian didn't hesitate for too long. She quickly agreed and entered the tavern with water-breaking arrow. Early in the morning, there weren't many players in the tavern. Shi Xiaotian picked a seat near the corner and sat down with water-breaking arrow. What would you like to drink? Water-breaking arrow took the initiative to ask. Shi Xiaotian's heart moved. His face was covered. If he asked what he wanted to drink, was he hinting for him to take off his mask? Shi Xiaotian took off his mask without batting an eyelid. Whatever. Water-breaking arrow turned his head and ordered 2 glasses of wine. It was the most frequent drink for ordinary players. However, he didn't have the slightest intention to wipe off the makeup on his face and reveal his true appearance. This guy. Shi Xiaotian found that the person in front of her was very stable. He wasn't easily affected by the environment or other people's actions. It was hard to detect the inner thoughts of this kind of person. Not to mention that his face was painted like this. Even some subtle expressions were distorted. It was really difficult. Shi Xiaotian took a sip of the wine and thought about where to start. Then, she saw water-breaking arrow take the initiative to greet her. No matter what, I still want to thank you for your help just now. Don't be too polite. We also have a purpose. Shi Xiaotian said. Studio? I'm really not interested. Water-breaking arrow said. Is that so? Shi Xiaotian looked straight at him. Are you not interested, or are you very satisfied with the current situation? Don't worry. If it's in terms of pay, our conditions are very generous. Pay? That's not what I mean. Water-breaking arrow said. Then if you have any requests, you can ask. Shi Xiaotian said. Studio, professional player, right? I'm just not interested in this industry. I don't have any thoughts about this job. Water-breaking arrow said. Really? But as far as I know, you're doing a good job. Shi Xiaotian said. What do you mean? Water-breaking arrow said. I mean, the work you're doing in the extreme cold. As Shi Xiaotian said those words slowly, the memory black box's scroll had already been secretly flipped open under the table for use. In order to not make any mistakes, everyone specially asked Brother Yu to collect the usage of this thing. There was only one point to using this black memory box. If it was a spell, the caster must continuously use it. If it was interrupted, it would be over. If it was a scroll, the scroll must be kept open. Other than that, there was no problem with the perspective. The video and sound within the radius of the center of the scroll would be perfectly preserved. As for the duration, it depended on the caster's mana. No matter if it was a spell or a scroll, mana would continue to be consumed. In other words, the more mana a person had, the longer the recording time would be. Chapter 523. At the end of the street, after seeing the figures of Shi Xiaotian and Broken Arrow disappear, Lu Ku, who had been hiding, let out a long sigh of relief and showed herself. Immediately after, Yu Tian Shenming on the roof also poked his head out. Unscathed in battle stood at the corner of the street and didn't leave. On another street, Sword Demon also turned and ran out. How was it? Yu Tian Shenming asked. It seems to be quite successful. Lucas said, I'm not asking about that, I'm asking if my arrows looked cool? Yu Tian Shenming said. Lucas. Bullshit, was it as cool as my whirlwind slash? Sword Demon was forced into a room by me. Ha, Sword Demon, be honest, if it was a real battle and I didn't show mercy, you wouldn't have been able to escape. Unscathed in battle vigorously patted Sword Demon and said. It's difficult. Sword Demon said honestly. Ha. Unscathed in battle was of course even more proud. But in a real battle, I won't tell you where I'm hiding. The more honest words were yet to come. Ha! The one laughing was now Yu Tian Shenming. Lu Ku wasn't in the mood to joke around with them. Their part had already been successfully performed, but this was just the beginning. The most important part was Shi Xiaoyan's one-man show. They couldn't go and watch it, so they could only wait here for news. One could imagine how they felt. Inside the tavern, the black memory box scroll was quietly activated. Shi Xiaotian estimated that the scroll would record a length of about 4 minutes and 24 seconds based on his mana that was slowly draining away. If everything went well, it should be enough. Shi Xiaotian thought to herself. She caught a fleeting glimpse of water-breaking Arrow's gaze from what she had just said. She was very pleased that she was able to capture some information from his eyes. In the end, she needed to observe the other party's reaction before she could proceed with the next step of guidance. In their field of expertise, this was known as mind reading. It had a magical name, but in fact, it was just some observation and deduction. For example, if you saw a wedding ring on the ring finger, you would know that the person was married. If you wore a watch on the right wrist, you might be left-handed. Deducing the other party's inner world through these details was naturally the most profound level. Just like any other skill, it required experience and training. Those who could master the mind-reading technique to the point of perfection were mostly old swindlers who had been in the pugilistic world for decades. For a swindler in his early 20s like Shi Xiaotian, what he lacked was not creativity or techniques, but the practice of mind-reading. However, there was a word called talent in this world. Just like Gu Fei's talent in Kung Fu, Shi Xiaotian was also born with a keen intuition when it came to mind-reading. But Broken Arrow's face was really a big obstacle. In addition, Broken Arrow almost didn't have any body language. He sat on the stool with both hands flat on the table. After raising the wine to Shi Xiaotian once, he didn't move it again. His eyes were steady, and he basically wouldn't look at Shi Xiaotian unless he was talking. Shi Xiaotian knew that it wasn't because he was avoiding her eyes, but because he was polite and respectful to a woman. That reaction just now was the only information that Shi Xiaotian had captured since the two sat down and started to carefully observe with mind-reading. She felt that it was very precious. She repeatedly recalled that look and deduced the possible meaning it might represent. At the same time, she was also waiting for Broken Arrow's answer to this question. In the end, there was no answer. Broken Arrow quietly looked at Shi Xiaotian, and his eyes seemed to be waiting for Shi Xiaotian to continue. Shi Xiaotian once again felt troubled. She had hoped that the water-breaking arrow would speak more and dig out some valuable information from the emotionless message. However, this person also spoke very little. This made Shi Xiaotian feel like she had no way of continuing. It was your outstanding performance in the extreme cold that made us notice you. Shi Xiaotian hurriedly said tentatively. She didn't forget that she still had to hurry. That's nothing. She replied flatly. Actually, we are also very interested in your plan. Shi Xiaotian said. That kind of eyes flashed again, and it was surprise. This time Shi Xiaotian saw it more clearly. In addition, there was an important word in her words. She used the term you, implying that they were a team. Was Broken Arrow's surprise because of this term? Shi Xiaotian really wanted to peel off the layer of grease on Broken Arrow's face and take a good look. To be honest, we are so greedy that we want to get you and your plan together. Shi Xiaotian continued. This time, she didn't believe that Broken Arrow would have no reaction at all. Sure enough, Broken Arrow seemed to helplessly shake his head. I don't want to join the studio. As for this plan, I feel that you seem to have some misunderstanding. Is that so? Shi Xiaotian didn't say much. It wasn't easy to get a chance for Broken Arrow to speak more. What I'm doing is just to help them. You said that you were interested in this? Forgive me for being blunt. Although I don't know much about the studio, but you should be pursuing benefits in the game, right? Why would you be interested in what I'm doing? Broken Arrow said. This guy. Shi Xiaotian didn't expect that Broken Arrow would give such a reply. Is he telling the truth? Or is it that our plan has some loophole and he has already guessed our goal from our words? If that's the case, I've been giving him too much information and the one who has been mind-read is actually me? Shi Xiaotian didn't have time to filter through the details of the entire plan. At this time, she regretted opening the black memory box too early. But there was no other way. Shi Xiaotian had already decided to open the black memory box when talking about the plan. From Lu Ku's understanding of Deep Water's personality, it was clear that only clear and detailed conversation details could convince him. Is that so? It seems to be very different from what we understand. Shi Xiaotian said. In fact, what Broken Arrow said just now was equivalent to announcing the failure of their plan this time. But the setup was so hard and the black memory box had already been opened. Shi Xiaotian still decided to gamble one last time. Oh, then what do you think? Broken Arrow's answer was just as Shi Xiaotian expected. Enter extreme cold, teach them practical forest combat techniques and trap techniques, establish a good image, win over the hearts of the people, and then find an opportunity to replace the original guild leader and take control of the entire guild. Shi Xiaotian threw out their deductions. Just as she expected, Broken Arrow didn't have much of a reaction. He only shook his head slightly. For a person with a stable mood like him, even if Shi Xiaotian predicted it 100%, it wouldn't cause him to have excessive fluctuations. While shaking his head, he calmly said, It's a big misunderstanding. I didn't mean it that way. But you have the conditions and opportunity to do this. Since you don't have the intention to join the studio, maybe you can consider helping us for a short time. Do as I said after that we— Enough! Broken Arrow suddenly interrupted Shi Xiaotian's words. Shi Xiaotian knew that she had completely failed. Her last move was a lure. Of course, she didn't want to use this as evidence to show Deep Water. She wanted to lure Broken Arrow into a cooperative relationship with her. In this way, the black memory box would be abandoned. Shi Xiaotian would be a collaborator and easily obtain more convincing evidence at any time. It could be said that if this move succeeded, even if Broken Arrow was originally innocent but was tricked by Shi Xiaotian to be black. His method couldn't be said to be not despicable, but at least he had obtained the necessary evidence. Whether to use it or not was up to Lu Ku and the others to decide. But it was a pity that this move also failed. Shi Xiaotian was interrupted by the water-breaking arrow before she could utter a realistic and enticing number. She could see the disgust in the water-breaking arrow's eyes. Standing up, he looked at Shi Xiaotian and said slowly, No matter what the purpose is, I am still grateful to you for saving me. But it seems that we are not on the same path. You know my name, so no matter when, as long as there is a proper way, I can return the favor to you. Besides, I hope that we will not have any contact in the future. Sorry, I will leave first. Finally, not forgetting to nod politely, Broken Arrow turned around and left. Sitting in the same place, Xiaotian was a little stunned. Finally, what she caught was still Broken Arrow's eyes. At present, there were only two possibilities. The first was that the water-breaking arrow had seen through their plan, and he was an even more brilliant liar than Xiaotian. The second was that there was nothing wrong with the water-breaking arrow, and Gu Fei and the others had misunderstood him from the start. On the roof of a pub, the moment Xiaotian and Broken Arrow left, Han family young master put away his binoculars. Brother Yu was very depressed at the side. He guessed that the wonderful show must have been finished, so he didn't even borrow the binoculars. He just asked, "How was it?" Idiot actor, wasted a wonderful script. Han family young master said. Failed? Brother Yu was surprised. He and Han family young master also fully understood Gu Fei's plan, but they couldn't play any necessary role in it. So they didn't go over to arouse suspicion. They just watched from afar with binoculars. Poor Brother Yu, he only saw the silent confrontation between Gu Fei and Broken Arrow from the beginning to the end. If I was Broken Arrow, they would definitely fail. Han family young master said. What do you mean? I don't know yet. Han family young master said. What happened? Brother Yu asked. Yutian Shunming interrupted Qianli's skill with an arrow. Then he showed off his high-damage snipe. Let me ask you, with such high damage, why didn't he kill Qianli in one shot? Han family young master said. This, even if Broken Arrow didn't notice it at the time, if he remembered this detail later on, how stupid would he be to not notice it? Han family young master asked. Doesn't that mean he would definitely fail? Brother Yu said. Let's hope he remembers it later. Han family young master said. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.